Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 7 of the Gravity Max live stream. Today, I am here with my co host Sebastian
Hello, everyone.
and our guest
guys.
and friend Zach.
Hello.
So, today we have a fun topic. You probably already know because of the title of this stream, and if you have been checking out the Gravity Max social media, it is Future Societies, but we'll get to that in a moment. So, how's everyone doing tonight?
All right.
I'm doing pretty okay.
Cool.
Um,
Out of breath
I'm
there?
very excited for today's topic. I think we got a really good one for you folks tonight,
Yep.
and I'm glad to have Zach here with us.
Yeah. All right. So I guess we should get right into the plugs, right?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So first, wait, did he? Okay. First, we have the Gravity Max social media and the Gravity Max website. You should check out the Gravity Max website because I have a sample text for my book, which I'll show you later. But it's a sneak peek for the book, which will be releasing in 12 days. And so you should.
I'm so ready for this book.
Here,
It's not even
wait.
funny.
That's
Good-
for.
great
We
book.
got to get to that plug slide. So that's for the Gravity Max website, and then you should also check out the Gravity Max social media accounts on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter because I will be posting updates throughout the week about my book as well as the stream and what the stream topic will be, who the stream guest will be. And if you like reminders like that, then you should totally follow these accounts. Also, you should follow Sebastian on social media at Carl_Marksman.
I got great content.
Great content. Yeah.
That's all I got to say.
Okay. So, yeah, I follow him. So, you should follow him as well.
Yeah.
Great
I'm followed
co-host.
by Gravity Max.
Yeah. He's followed by the one and only Gravity Max
The
YouTube
one
channel.
Only.
So, it's a pretty big account. And then finally, we have our book, my book, which
No
is,
way! That's my
Yeah.
favorite book, bro.
Yep. It'll be available on Amazon.com in 12 days. There will be a link on the Gravity Max website as well as in the stream. We will talk about it once we're leading up to it, but we have one stream until it releases. You should really follow those Gravity Max social media accounts, and you really should check out the website because I will be reminding you, let's say, I will be
Nice.
reminding you that the book is coming out. It will be coming out noon Eastern Standard Time on Thanksgiving Day. And that is what, the 28th? Yeah, the 28th. So,
Yep.
based
How
on the
many
way that
copies did you
Amazon's...
order?
Oh, yeah?
How many copies do you have in total?
Yeah, that's the thing. I don't have copies. Amazon prints the
you're-
copies for you, and they give you an
See,
author's
that's pretty
copy.
cool.
But
Mm.
based on the way that the Amazon algorithms work, it's really good if everyone buys it on the first day. So I am going to make sure that everyone knows who wants the book
Y'all
to
better
buy
buy
it.
it, bro.
Buy it on the first
You
day,
better buy
okay? Don't let
Yeah.
the negative reviews pile up. Just buy it on the first. No,
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. Of course,
Do it.
there will be no negative reviews. Anyways,
There will be
once it releases on
no
Amazon,
negative reviews allowed.
once it releases on Amazon and once you read the book, please leave your opinions on Amazon Review. You can review the book and tell me what you think of it and hopefully convince others to buy it as well. I think this will go really great with this platform and the people. I hope that you guys decide to buy the book. It's a science fiction book, by the way. I'll just repeat this. From many streams ago. It's a science fiction book, and if you or a relative really like science fiction, you should buy it, especially if you know someone that likes science fiction because it is the holiday season, of course. So you should buy A Truly Dead Rock for them as a present. And
Exactly.
yeah. And I put a lot of work into this book and a lot of research. It's very founded in science, so it won't have any glaring plot holes that just anger you. So, because I know that really grinds my gears when there's a book, a sci-fi book, and I'm thinking that is not scientifically possible. So, just you guys should buy the book. If you're watching
I'm
this channel,
buying this book.
yeah, if you're watching this channel,
This book is
then,
going to be bought
uh-huh,
by me.
nice. Basically, if you're interested in the topic and subject matter of this channel, then you'll be interested in the book. So, enough said. Oh, yes. Now we've got some memes.
Yeah, so last stream I promised all of you guys that I was going to make some memes out of the picture that we had on our last stream, and we all agreed that looked like a meme format already.
Yeah.
So me and the lab boys on right now, we cooked up some pretty fresh memes for
Yes,
y'all.
we did.
So the first one, we have Jam as the blue skeleton man, and he is rejecting the idea of pronouncing longevity correctly.
I want to see what he says in the chat if he's watching. Sorry to bust your chops.
He could be on. He's not active in chat yet.
Oh, no.
But sorry, Jam, we gotta drag you for this one.
It's okay. It's okay. We love you, Jam. You should come back on the stream. Go check out Jam's channel. Anyways.
Yes, Jam_has_been.
Yeah. Anyways.
On Twitch.
Next
one.
All right, on to the next one.
Rain, rain, go away.
Rain.
Then rain. Yeah.
Rain.
It is.
This is pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah. It's a perfect.
If you've ever sang the song, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know.
It's a perfect way to keep the rain away. I think it has a 100% success rate. Has never not worked once. The only problem is when you follow it with "Come Again Another Day" and then it does. Why would you even add that?
The more you sing that song and the more you say "Come Again Another Day," it just keeps building up over time. So that one time you forget to say it, it's like floods everything.
I think that needs a short story written on it. Yeah,
Honestly.
This man, every day at noon, he has to go to the town spire and recite the ritual incantations. Rain, rain, go away. Come again another day. And then one day, this man, I don't know, trips over a rock and passes out. And then he doesn't get to the spire. And clouds start forming, start building. And he's running to get to the spire. Crazy gale force winds, then hurricane category 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And he finally gets to the top and says, rain, rain, go away, come again another day. And it's gone. So, I think...
For those of you who don't know, that's how a truly dead rock is.
Yes. Yeah. You'll have that level of creative writing. No, but... Yeah. Anyways, next...
On to the next one.
So we've got a few editing here.
From our quantum mechanics stream,
yep.
We got electrons undergoing quantum tunneling, passing through the potential barrier.
Yep. So, perfect callback to that stream. You should watch it. Also, I love the use of editing here. I mean, look at that.
Thank you.
What did that take?
It took me
Photoshop?
less than 5 seconds.
$100 crazy expensive video image processing programs.
I had to call up my boy Jay Bezos so he could fund whatever program I use to do this.
Nice job.
Nice.
All right.
Dedication to your art.
Yeah, dedication to the craft.
So this one is kind of an inside joke.
Oh yes.
One. Through the last stream, I'm sure you guys noticed a reoccurring character of the quantum mechanic.
Yep.
Well, I was messing around last stream, and in Microsoft Paint, I created this monstrosity.
Oh, no.
If you guys know the song Big Iron by Murdy Robbins, I have made the quantum mechanic into the ranger with the big iron on his hip.
Mm-hmm.
And
nice.
I shared that around.
Yeah.
At the end of our last stream, it is giving Max nightmares.
Yep. That is why it is unsuccessful.
It is surpassing his efforts to ward them off, as depicted.
Yeah. So this man, the cowboy quantum mechanic, he has successfully invaded my dreams like Freddy Krueger. and I have not been able to ward off the nightmares. So, anyways, next meme. Okay, this is a funny one.
This was also pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah,
I think.
me trying to eat the couch
Couch
stuffing, my
stuffing.
mom stopping me from eating the couch stuffing. I think it's a very relatable
yeah.
meme. Who hasn't
Yeah.
tried to eat their couch stuffing at some point in
like,
time?
come on, man.
Anyways,
delicious.
the
It's
forbidden
Thanksgiving,
cotton candy.
guys.
So then
so
I
the
made a
next one-
follow-up of this. Sebastian made this meme, and so then I followed it up with my dog trying to eat the couch stuffing, me eating the couch stuffing.
Couch stuffing. But this combined with the last image raises the question:
Uh-huh.
where did the mom go? Where
I
is
don't
she?
know. I think she gave up.
Is she just overwhelmed by both the efforts of you and the dog?
Yeah, I think
Or has she succumbed as well to eating the couch stuffing?
maybe she's eating the couch stuffing. I think she's
so.
just given up on parenting. Once your kid starts eating the couch stuffing, where do you even go from there?
I don't know. There's
Yeah.
nowhere to go but
You
down.
go get a new couch. That's what you do.
That's true.
Oh, so she went to IKEA then. That's
Ooh.
it.
Yeah.
That's the answer.
Yeah.
Theory resolved. All right, next meme.
All right, next one. This one I'm pretty proud
Only
of.
gamers will understand.
Only true gamers will understand this one.
Yep.
I love how the plague is labeled as a plague.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, honestly, we could have just left out the label on that one and just wrote Greenland.
That's true. That's true. We could have just written Greenland. Everyone, only true gamers would understand. I don't think we should explain this any further. Only gamers get
Yeah.
this meme.
Let's go on to the next one.
All right. Nice. Sokatoa,
Hmm.
tell me how to do taxes. So
And the skeleton is labeled with school.
So I don't know how
And-
many of you guys watching know Sokatoa, but if you do, then you know.
I also want to point something out.
Yes.
This skeleton is not actually anatomically correct.
No?
Right now I'm taking an anatomy course,
Oh,
and
anatomy and
I
physiology.
literally just noticed this. I probably should have noticed it faster, but this
Mhm.
skeleton is actually anatomically incorrect.
Where?
If you look at the forearms, he only has one bone in the forearms, when that is actually
Oh
false.
my gosh, you're right. Yeah.
You have
You're supposed to
two
have
bones in your
two.
forearm. One is the radius, one is the tibia,
Mm.
and they're tibia. Sorry, one is the radius, one is the ulna, and they are connected to the humerus, which is depicted accurately as fitting
Mm.
into the shoulder blade or scapula. And I'll just leave it there.
Yeah,
The
I think
skeleton is
the
missing two
divisions
bones.
between the medical
Forbidden
community and the
knowledge.
mathematical community arise when you shout out the word radius. Because I can't help but think of the math term, especially with
Mhm.
the Sokatoa prompting here.
Exactly.
Yeah, so that's fun. Those were all of them, right?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
So let's go over to the next one. This is our topic for
Yes,
today.
future
is
society.
Future societies.
And we have a
So
nice.
as you can see here, we live in a society.
Mhm. Because we do. And people in the
We do.
future likely will too if there's more than one of them. Because that's how society works.
Mhm.
And then we also have the blue guy voting. There's Gravity holding up the sign, we live in a society, and Max is voting. Those are the official names of the characters, by the way.
Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
yeah. I think this
So, yeah.
episode, we are going to talk about future societies and how they might look, how people might live in the future, what possibilities are in store. So if you want to know, if you desperately want to know what will society be like
Yep.
in the future, then these are some possible options. For better and for
also-
worse,
yeah.
you know?
So we're also going to look at how the idea of what a utopian society is,
Yep.
like what a perfect society is, how that has like changed, and that's
Yeah.
leading right into our
Yep.
what the next slide is going to be,
Yes.
where the idea of what societies should attain to be
Mhm.
has changed based on the society that any individual is living in.
Yeah.
So people living in totalitarian governments often just value freedom the most. people in other societies might value other aspects more than other ones. It's all relative to the person's perspective.
Yeah.
So
People
we're
usually
going to
want
be
what they like. People usually want what they don't have.
That's-
exactly.
Sometimes
it's the grass is always greener principle.
That's true. Sometimes the opposite happens too, where people reflect the ideas of their society. So it's interesting.
Mhm.
It's true. Sometimes people
yeah.
want what they don't have, but then other times, when they're so entrenched in their own societies, as any person is, they reflect some of the values of their society in their beliefs. So it's interesting, and that's the concept of a utopia, is a perfect society. So whoever is thinking of this utopia, this perfect society, their ideas will differ based on their current society in the modern day or in the past. So yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
So yeah, let's head over to the next slide, and
Yes.
we pretty much introduced this, but we're talking about utopias in
Yep.
this first section.
Yeah.
So a utopia is described as like a perfect civilization, a perfect society.
Mm-hmm.
It's been sought after since like the ancient Greeks. It's been something that everyone has tried to attain throughout history, but it seems like no one's actually attained it.
The word is Greek, right? Greek
Yeah,
roots?
what
does it mean?
I believe it's like I forget what the there's
The
some
etymology?
significance behind the name.
I think it actually means like nowhere. Like
Oh
there's
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you mentioned that. It means nowhere.
Yes, it means it's literally translated as non-place, more figuratively as place that cannot exist.
So that's
So,
interesting
yeah.
because there is the possibility that a perfect society is not possible, because if you think about it, if there's one unhappy person, and not even unhappy, one person that's just discontent, that isn't completely jazzed with the whole situation, then it's not a utopia.
Well,
You
Yeah.
I think it depends
It has to be
what
perfect.
definition of utopia you take.
That's true.
But because I think part of like a utopia would be that people would be able to feel discontent. Because if everyone's just like happy all the time, that would be
That's true.
a very perfect society.
That's true.
Yeah,
I mean, more-
there's tons of different definitions actually. If you look at it, if you just Google utopia definition, the dictionary definition that Google will give you is that it's defined as an imagined place or state of things in which everything is perfect. But then if
Yeah.
you go to the Merriam-Webster dictionary, they define it as a place of ideal perfection, especially in laws, government, and social conditions. So there's different levels. Like with the first Google definition, it's everything is perfect. With the Merriam-Webster definition, there's ideal perfection.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the problem is that some systems cannot be perfect. At least in modern times, some systems cannot be made perfect. So even if they're in their best state, there are some people that will say, no, this needs to be improved, this needs to be changed, it's not perfect, and then that might actually inadvertently make it worse. But
Capitalism.
no comment. The only way that a utopia could occur would be if every system was perfect and if people no longer wanted change. You have to think about that. People would have to stop wanting change, which would be really bad news for politicians, for instance, because I think almost every political platform runs on change, like a lot of the recent ones, don't you think? I think a lot of, there are some that are keep things the way they are, but by and large, it's let's change things. So people want to change things and improve their situation if they can. So the difficulties with achieving a utopia is that you would actually need to make things perfect, because if they aren't perfect, even if they're in their best possible state, people will still want to change it. So it's complicated, you know?
It is, yeah. Let's head over to the next slide.
Sure.
All right.
Right.
So, yeah, go ahead, Zach.
So, The Republic is a book by the Greek philosopher Plato, who lived around like 400 BC, and Plato was known for imagining a lot of different ideal things. So the Republic was his version of an ideal society, and in this society, it was ruled by philosopher kings that essentially had like all of the power in the society, and the society had like a lot of focus on education and other interesting principles that are like incredibly different from what we have today. As in, for example, like people you wouldn't have like one wife, or there weren't like single marriages. Everyone would just share like amongst themselves and have like common children, I guess.
Okay.
But this utopia was sort of a culmination of like the Greek ideals of how society should look.
Yeah. It makes sense that a philosopher's utopia is one where philosophers are in charge too.
Yeah.
It's really interesting though. In this time period, philosophers were also scientists. Philosophy and science were united, kind of. They hadn't really been delineated yet, because Plato is also known for, this is what I know him for, the Platonic solids, which are the 5 3D shapes that you can make out of regular polygons, like the same regular polygon. There's only 5 of them, and they're the Platonic solid. They're the tetrahedron, the cube, the octahedron, the dodecahedron, and the icosahedron. Pretty much your Dungeons and Dragon dice, you know? Except for that one diamond one.
I have one in front of me right now. Funny that you should mention.
Which Platonic solid is it?
It's the pyramid one.
Nice. Tetrahedron. So yeah.
It's labeled from 1 to 4.
Yep.
What do you boys think I'm gonna roll?
I'm gonna say 3.
What'd you say?
I'm gonna go with 2.5.
Alright, and it's a 4.
Ah, so close. That was the second.
That's a pretty good damage roll. If you ask me.
That's true, actually.
Yeah. We could do a stream about the science behind Dungeons and Dragons.
We could. Just a tutorial.
Yeah.
I think that would probably go well with the Gravity Max all-nighter, as it would take all night.
Oh, yeah.
No, just actually play.
Yeah, we just,
Yeah, that's definitely possible.
Yeah, it's not a bad idea, actually.
We would get so distracted.
Let's head over to the next slide.
Okay. This slide.
There's a lot going on in this photo.
I think the story behind this slide is Zach put this picture in when we were working on the slideshow. Where did you find this picture? What were you looking for exactly?
I was just like looking at utopias, and then I looked up, like, I was looking at utopias based on different cultures, and then I looked up like French utopia, and then of course this stuff shows up.
So let's everyone make a critique about this.
Okay.
Max, what's your critique? You can start this one off. Okay,
my critique is the guy over to the right, above that white and red flag, who has wings like on his arms and legs, and he's just flying, which that would take immense arm and leg strength to fly with wings that tiny, considering how heavy humans are, unless he had helium injected into his veins. According to all laws of aviation, a man with wings and strapped to his arms and legs should not be able to fly, but yet he does. B-movie script. Anyways, it's crazy, this picture.
All right. Zach, you want to give your critique of this?
All right, yeah. It's that there's a single tree. If you look in like the middle right-hand side, there's just that one tree there. Like, why? Why is there only one tree? It doesn't make sense. For what purpose did they include it? You know, is it like some symbol, some like metaphor for like the old civilization because they had turned so rapidly to whatever this new stuff is? that they had to leave one single remnant of like the old ways, but
Uh-huh.
I actually do not know why that tree is there.
I bet it's since this was before the copy and paste function existed, the artist did not want to draw that same tree over and over again to draw a forest, so he just drew the one and said, imagine.
My critique of this, I think it's kind of funny, actually.
Uh-huh.
So if everyone directs their eyes down to the guy all in white holding that red and white flag and the torch,
Yep.
I love how he's just like, come on, guys, let's go this way. And the guy on the horses and the guy on the white horse is like, yeah, let's go this way. And then everyone just above him, besides the dude with the trumpet, is going the exact opposite direction.
That's pretty good. Oh my gosh.
I also like how the guy, if you look above the guy on the white horse, that dude, he's just flying with nothing but oars.
That's true.
I think that's pretty intuitive.
I think that's even worse than the wings. Oh my gosh. That's the most egregious error. Also, you see Mary Poppins in the middle with that umbrella.
Yeah,
Oh
absolutely.
So this
I also
picture
like
is
how this
called...
guy brought his trumpet.
Yeah.
Because
There's always a trumpet. A bugle.
Yep.
Yeah. So the picture is... The picture is called, if you notice in the bottom left, I'm probably going to offend every person that speaks French. So I'm just going to translate it to English roughly first, and maybe slightly less offend them. Anyways, the utopia of navigation in the sky. So I think it's supposed to be like ships, but if they can float. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I was about to read the
like
sentence in French, but I did not. I don't have a French accent or even pronunciation of things, so I would not want people to start writing, you don't say that. You only pronounce 2 out of the 6 letters here. Like, okay.
Well, it's obviously pronounced Les Utopias de la Navigation.
What?
Okay.
That sounds Spanish.
Yeah,
no,
that's true.
It was,
it's more Spanish.
No, that's how you pronounce it.
Oh,
okay.
Okay.
I guess, should we move on to the next slide?
Yeah, I think we should move on to some
Wait, one last thing. Look at that anchor. On the top right, that tiny balloon in the background is dropping an anchor. Imagine someone just drops an anchor on your house from a hot air balloon.
Wrecks the windmill.
Exactly.
Land ho!
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Oh my god. And that's from 1,000 feet in the air. I think that would kill you. That would kill a small family.
Definitely.
Facts.
Call up Mythbusters, get them to test it out.
Yeah, Mythbusters.
Yeah, if you look, that anchor is like the size of that house.
I know. Oh, that's frightening.
Size of the windmill.
This doesn't seem very utopian to me.
To the next slide.
Okay. Next slide. Scandinavia.
Yeah. So, this is actually an interesting one. A lot of people say that Scandinavia is like a modern day utopia. So we spent a lot of time this week like digging up dirt on Scandinavia, trying to see if there's anything wrong with it. But I mean, I'll admit it's not a perfect society. It might be arguably the closest the modern world has come to some form of a utopia, but it is still not entirely perfect.
Mm-hmm. So what are some of those imperfections?
Yeah, so hold on real quick before we delve into the imperfection.
Yeah.
I was talking to Max about this earlier. My mom is good friends with someone from Denmark.
Oh yeah.
And she asked her Danish friend the question like, why is because Denmark has been voted like the happiest country time and time again. She asked her like, why do you think that is? And her Danish friend's response was that in Scandinavia, people's expectations are a lot lower than they are over in like America or Britain or any of those places. Like the hotels and like the living spaces, they're all completely efficiency. They're all like economy class. Everyone just goes for efficiency rather than comfort.
That's true. If you've been to Europe in general, the hotel rooms, the standard hotel room is a lot smaller than in America if you were to go on a cross country or anywhere in the States. So that's interesting. I think that plays into because obviously this is a American-based stream because we all live in America. So this is the American perspective with the concept of the American dream and things like that. I think it's gotten a lot of people to expect to become very successful in life, which is good. I mean, I want to be really successful in life, but I think in Scandinavia and other parts of the world, there's more of a focus on just getting to a place where you're happy and not just acquiring more and becoming more accomplished, you know?
Yeah,
I think
and
it's
they also have an
yeah.
abundance of things relative to their like population, because most of these countries still have like a pretty decently small population size.
Yeah.
So I think it's less competitive in general.
That's true
Mhm.
too.
Which is
There's
always good.
there's a lot of natural resources there, such as oil, I think lumber, maybe
Yeah.
mining. I don't remember, but I think
Fish,
I know oil, fish too. Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's an interesting society.
So yeah, and I'm sure it's interesting because usually the biggest critics of a country are its citizens. You know.
That's true.
So with the Scandinavian population, I feel like, and my mother's friend also talked about this, they aren't as invested in politics. They're not as politically active as a whole like we are like in America. In America, almost like every American is like always aware of like what the politics are, like what the economy is like,
especially
all of that,
recently.
and we're all pretty active and knowledgeable in that aspect. But in Scandinavia, people tend to not worry about that kind of stuff as much, and I think that says a lot, because usually the more you know about something, the more like you'll like almost like criticize it.
Yeah.
I feel like especially with like politics and like the government and stuff, but in Scandinavia, the general mindset from what I've gathered is that it's the government's job to just provide like safety for its citizens, and then the citizens just go about their daily lives and let the government take care of government issues. That's not really the case in like America or like Britain or other European countries south of Scandinavia. The people are always like politically active, like what you've seen over with Brexit, or like any of the many political things happening in America right now. Everyone's very politically active, but in Scandinavia, that's not the case.
Yeah.
So I just thought that was an interesting point to bring up.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
And that might be breaking down as well, because I've heard that some Scandinavians are becoming discontent with some of their nation's immigration policies. Their countries, they're fairly welcoming of immigrants. And
Zach, what were you saying earlier?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I was going to say that they don't have to be as politically active because they think that in general the government is doing a decent job of keeping them safe. Yeah. So they don't like want to get too involved in it.
Yeah.
Whereas in America, no one thinks the government's doing its job.
Yeah.
Or very few people.
People are very cynical of the government, very distrustful.
Yeah, with immigration, it's interesting because all of these countries have pretty much they don't really have that much diversity. So now with the immigration crisis, it's interesting to see their responses to immigrants, like if they're welcoming them or what the citizens want, because they sort of, from what I've seen, some people wanted to just keep it as like not as diverse as other places.
Yeah, and that's interesting. It's kind of it's sad, and it's like a response that you see a lot from the natives, like the people that live in a country when immigrants arrive. And so this might end up breaking down this sort of utopia-esque apolitical Scandinavian life, because the people of Scandinavia might become more invested in politics as more people get angry about immigration, and then others in response get mad at those people and say, no, we should still be welcoming, and it might just become a bit of a mess. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting
Yeah, I
place.
see what you're saying.
Yeah. And also a difference with Scandinavia compared to America is that the government does provide a lot more for the people there. What is it?
Yeah.
Universal health care, I believe? Or is it subsidized, something like that?
Yeah, they definitely have some socialist form of healthcare, something like that.
And they have education too.
Oh, free higher education? Free college?
Yeah,
pretty sure.
I believe so.
Yeah, so that's interesting because those policies that doesn't really exist in America. However, it is being floated around by some of the major Democratic candidates in the running for the 2020 election. So it's interesting because I don't know. Everyone has their views on that, but it is an aspect of Scandinavian society, and if we view this society as, I don't know, more utopian, then it's an aspect to consider. But yeah.
All right.
So yeah, let's head over to the next one.
Sure.
All right.
Nice. Now we get into futuristic stuff. So
yeah,
we were talking about the past and present, and now we're talking about the future. So yeah.
Yeah. So here you have the Ecumenopolis. And yes, that's the correct pronunciation. I have it written down in my notes here.
Nice.
The basic idea of it is a planet-wide city. The entire surface, or at least a massive majority of the surface of a planet is covered by a city. Right? It comes from the two Greek words meaning world and meaning city. So thus the name literally translates to a city made of the whole world. Right? So I've seen it been done in some scientific novels, and I actually experimented with this topic as well in one of my drafts. And honestly, the trend of these is that there's always the issues that we have in cities today, like high crime rates, lots of homelessness. And I know it's ridiculous. It's you have all of these living spaces. It's it's a planet-wide city, but homelessness is still an issue just because of costs and stuff like that. It's the problems of cities just magnified on a planetary scale.
Yeah.
Wouldn't there also be within each city? Within the city as a whole? Wouldn't there be some areas wouldn't there be drastic wealth inequality between people?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that actually does get into the dystopian aspect, which we have a slide for later, the dystopian aspect of a Ecumenopolis. But that is definitely true. They are most often, I find, I think more often than not, they're portrayed negatively instead of positively. But they have the possibility to be very positive. So
if planned correctly,
if planned correctly,
it could be a utopia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't
Max and I sure, go ahead.
Okay. Well, so what I was going to say was you wouldn't just build this overnight. This would pretty much develop as, say, more people move to New York, so they begin to spread out and build more of New York. More people move to Los Angeles, they spread out, build more of Los Angeles, Chicago, all of the major cities in the country, and eventually they kind of start merging together to the point where there isn't much rural land left, and then even there's not much suburban land left. If you think of the New York metropolitan area, from New York to Washington, D.C., it's often considered this big clump where even the suburban areas are rather densely populated. So this is more of a gradual process, I think, from today's world to Ecumenopolis, just as demand increases for living space.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, what I was gonna say earlier is that when I originally presented this idea to Max and we were discussing it, he brought up the point that in most stories, planet-wide cities are often like criminally underpopulated.
Oh yeah.
And I'm running the same calculations I did last time.
Yeah, what was that,
And
a year ago? I think that was at
Yeah,
another
yeah,
friend of
that was
ours'
a while
birthday
ago.
party. That was pretty fun. It was
Um,
in their backyard. We talked about this. I think because you wanted to, in your book that you're currently working on and that we will advertise once it is ready to publish.
yeah,
I think you wanted the population of the city to be 600 million, right?
yeah,
So
yeah,
now,
something around that
here's the
number.
thing. This is an interesting. It's scale is a difficult problem both with writers and readers because 600 million people sounds like a lot for a city, and indeed it is. There is no city on Earth today with 600 million people. Like New York has 8 million, and I think the biggest cities in the world, like Shanghai, Tokyo, I think maybe have 16 million tops, but I don't think there's no city that gets above, say, 25 million. Like nowhere near that. So,
Well, Tokyo is at 37
oh, it is?
million, I think.
Oh, wow, okay. But
So, but that would still be
yeah,
like I
a
don't know,
factor
20
of
Tokyo.
20-ish. So,
Yeah.
yeah, all of our cities today, let's say all of our biggest cities are in the tens of millions of people. And 600 million would sound like a lot. But think about the fact that it's over an entire planet. And if you think of Earth in its current state, Earth has 7 billion people and counting, and it is nowhere near the level of population density that a Eucomenopolis would be. So 600 million would be way less than now. 600 million was like 1700s level population. So together we workshopped that and we changed it to 600 billion instead of 600 million to get a more realistic figure. And that is about the population you would see, which is crazy to think that it's more accurate to multiply by 1,000. And so this would be about 100 times the population that lives on Earth today in this planet-wide city, which is pretty crazy. So
yeah. These things are it's just a massive amount of people, and just when you're writing like a book, and it was obviously going to be a futuristic book, but when you get to the point where you need a population that's like 900 billion people, and like I did employ the idea of like aliens, like spoilers for the book, but that's revealed in the first
paragraph.
page. Yeah, in the first paragraph, honestly.
Yeah.
Even with that, it would be like, I don't know, if you go back to our first stream where we predicted like the populations throughout the years, if you use that same trend, I don't even know. I couldn't even give you an estimate of how long it would take, honestly.
Yeah, it takes a while, but at the same time, you just have to set it pretty far in the future. It's exponential growth, really, because if you can build a Eucomenopolis, then you have access to a lot more resources. And I think the planet's limit, experts disagree, but somewhere around 10 million we could possibly support. Some even argue that we aren't fully supporting people today. So that's what curbs your exponential growth. But if you have the resources to build a Eucomenopolis in the first place, then you can go for exponential growth. And I think you could get, say, 100 times the population. I think, didn't we double population on Earth in like the last 40 years or something?
Something like that.
Like the last half a century. So if you think of that as your time frame, quadrupling the population every century and then getting 100 times more would only take a handful of centuries, 500 years at the most.
And I think
which
the only like real invention that would be standing in the way of something like this, it would be like some crazy new power source, which isn't like impossible. So if we, I don't know, if someone like figures out like dark matter or some stuff, then you never know, because once you have enough energy, pretty much anything is possible in terms of
Yeah.
how large a society can get.
Yeah, energy is everything, really. And that's true. That actually kind of makes me think of another point, is that if you think of a city like New York and think of the food that the people need to eat there, it's all imported. Maybe from the rest of the state of New York, upstate New York, but also from the entire country. Is you cannot grow food in a city like in modern times. And even in the future, there is such thing as hydroponics, and there are advanced techniques that you could use. But if you think of the classic idea of a city importing resources that it cannot make for itself, and then you think of a planet, this planet needs to be importing resources from space, because where else would it import them from? So a Eucomenopolis, I think, necessitates at least a little bit of spacefaring, a little bit, even just to the surrounding solar system, just to collect asteroids and resources, and to, say, put up big solar panels just floating in space that can beam energy down to the planet, like Zach said. It needs imports, and it needs a space infrastructure to support those imports as a planet-wide city.
Yeah. You want to head over to the next slide?
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Okay.
All right.
Nice. It's kind of like Eucomenopolises would be built of these, possibly. So this is an arcology, and it is, the word comes from architecture and ecology. So if you mix those two words together, you get arcology. And it means that it's a building mixed with nature. And it really is just a very big building. Like if you look at the other buildings in the background here, you basically have a giant building that can actually grow food within the building, which is our hydroponics, can supply stores within the building, and have people live there. So an arcology could possibly be self-sufficient, and you could think of 1 million people living in one building and no one ever needing to leave unless they wanted to visit a relative, which is an interesting possibility.
Now, an interesting thing to think about for this one, that it's not necessarily a utopia. It would just be, I think that would be pretty miserable if everyone was just trapped in one building, regardless of how large it was. Like, there's something containing about it.
Yeah.
But I think it actually is a possible future society, especially because of how much commercial America is becoming. Like the movie WALL-E, that's essentially, except it's in a spaceship and not a building. But everyone, I could see this being something that we have in the future, but I wouldn't think of it as necessarily a utopia.
Well, it could be utopian, it could be dystopian. We should touch on these when we get over to the dystopian society, the Eucomenopolis-based one. But there are ways that these can be utopian. I mean, just look at that. That's pretty nice aesthetic, first of all. And if it is not a restrictive society, if you can still travel, then I think that's where the problem arises. If you are confined forcefully to this building, then that's bad. But if the building is able to support a population that doesn't have to leave, but they can if they want to, then I think you can get into more utopian territory. That's kind of what I think.
Yeah, so if you notice in the top right, there's a book cover. So I believe I mentioned this in the last stream before it, but there is this entire series called the Silo series by this guy, Hugh Howey. This is the first book in the series. Like I said last time, I read this book like a while ago, but from what I remember, and when we started researching all these different kinds of utopias, such as like the arcology, I realized that this book centered around actual arcologies.
Mm-hmm.
Like the series is called the Silo series because everyone lives in these massive like towers that go directly up, kind of like silos on a farm.
Yeah.
If you've ever seen those massive like tanks that go straight up,
Mm-hmm.
everyone was basically living in like supersized versions of those.
And was
like
it
these
dystopian?
towers were so big that like societies formed, like
Mm.
different societies formed on like the top and bottom levels,
Hmm.
and they had no idea that the either existed.
Oh wow.
And it was
How big
definitely
were they
a
supposed to
very
be?
interesting book. So I would check it out.
How big were these buildings supposed to be? What was the scale?
I couldn't tell you.
Okay.
I have all the books on my really old Kindle, which hasn't been charged since like 2015.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
If you want, I could boot that up. I could try anyways. But
also, I think the scale is probably like just too
Yeah.
massive to
I remember that
Yeah.
it took like 4 days to like get through like a portion of like the stairs because they didn't have
Oh, wow.
elevators. That was like
Oh
the
no.
biggest thing. They didn't have like any elevators.
Oh
I
my
remember.
God.
There was just this massive stairwell, and like people would like sleep on the stairwell like during their journey, as they
Wow.
called it, because like the distance between even just between floors was like so big that they would need to like always take breaks and everything.
Yeah, I don't think
And-
I could live there.
Yeah. The generator that
It's scary.
I'm just remembering stuff from the book
Yeah.
now because we're talking about it. The generator that powered the entire building was like in the very, very basement,
Mm.
and it was like so loud that it would like legitimately like rupture your eardrums
Dang.
if you went near it. So everyone
crazy.
had to wear like headphones
Uh-huh.
or like earmuffs on like the bottom
Yeah.
couple of floors, and it was crazy. It was actually kind of a gripping book.
Hmm.
There was a very interesting twist concerning the characters, but
Oh.
I would definitely recommend this if you want to learn more about arcologies.
Yeah.
Or like the reason I talked about it last time was because one of the main antagonists in the book uses nanites,
Yeah.
which is a life extension technology.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would definitely check out this book.
Yeah. Now, yeah, so totally. Arcologies, they can be very dystopian, but I don't want to give them too much of a bad rap, you know? Because I think this is, if you think about, we're going to get into this later with our space habitation slides, but space stations and living in space, you are really living in a giant building. If you think about it, no matter how big you make a space station, even if you make an entire artificial world that is hundreds of miles across, right? Like Rama from Rendezvous with Rama, that is still just a building because you have built it. So it's an arcology. So this is pretty much taking space habitation and bringing it down to Earth, which is interesting, and it very well can be dystopian. But, you know, if you keep it clean, you know, instead of letting the city become garbage like a lot of cities I have in my mind, and that I don't want to diss the city, scratch that. I do want to diss the city, but I don't want people to get mad at me for dissing the city. So there are a few cities that are like completely filthy, right? And you would not want your arcologies to become like that. But if you could keep them clean, like some other cities, then that would be nice. And it could be pretty cool. With like super high ceilings and, like you said, the distance between floors, massive. Hopefully, yes, there would be elevators, except at that point they would be more like vertical trains, I think. Because
honestly,
at that point they would just be vertical trains instead of elevators. So, yeah, that's interesting. Any other comments?
No, I think we can head on to the next one.
Cool.
So the next one is underwater civilizations, underwater cities. So any true gamers will recognize this as BioShock art. And I actually made like the city underwater from BioShock 1 is called Rapture.
Mhm.
I actually made Rapture into my wallpaper. I think that's
Nice.
been a trend throughout a lot of these streams.
This is just
Me,
Sebastian's
turning
wallpaper
the images
collection.
into my wallpapers.
Nice.
So I have like a window view down into the city. But anyways, when we say underwater civilization, one obviously comes to mind, and that would be Atlantis.
Yes.
Atlantis has usually been looked at as a utopia.
Yeah.
Unless you follow like the Aquaman
Like a
storyline.
fallen utopia. That's usually yeah.
So yeah, I think it's interesting actually.
Mhm.
Sometimes people just go to a change in location as being a utopia. Like we have like an underwater civilization. Like people are like, oh, space habitation. That'll be the utopia. But thing is that the one common thing between an underwater society, a space habitat, and just what we're living in now is that humans are present in all three, and it's the problems that humans. It's usually the problems that humans create that are the biggest ones.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, also,
so it's interesting to see how people just think that removing the like location aspect of it like changes it. But yeah, go ahead.
Well, also the thing is, these don't need to be their own countries. If you think about it, there doesn't need to be a country in the middle of the Pacific that's all underwater. This could be the fact that a country owns the 22 miles off of its coast, and that right is usually reserved so that they can export products like seafood and fishing and stuff like that. But if they find it more valuable to set up cities in those 22 miles, they might just hop on that. And then eventually treaties might change and they could spread even further. And then before you know it, you have another U.S. state that's just underwater.
Well, I'm actually thinking about this, and I don't know, probably a lot of people haven't seen Neo Yokio, but there's this part in Neo Yokio, which is like a satirical utopia, where it's like they're sort of like in New York, but then you get on like this like glass subway sort of thing, and part of the city is now underwater. And it's like a smooth transition from the above ground into the below ground, especially with like rising sea levels and the such.
Yeah,
it would be interesting to see if we start like trying to build stuff underwater.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned New York, because even without the rising ocean levels, Manhattan Island has always been sinking. The foundation, I think it used to be a smaller island than it currently is, and the settlers just expanded it like haphazardly. So with 1700s technology, right? So it's always been a problem that the city has been sort of sinking. So if you could figure out how to build buildings that were pressurized and could withstand being underwater, then you might as well just start building them underwater.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think So
what I was going to say is that we have talked about a lot of issues concerning society, especially overpopulation in our past streams, like and Singapore, which is like a criminally overpopulated nation, has been actually experimenting with having an underwater civilization, because like they've run out of land basically, but they could actually utilize
they have very little
they
land.
could utilize like arcologies, or they could utilize this underwater tech.
That's crazy if they are the forefront and lead that, because
I think if one
just use the Singapore map,
it will just start like a trend.
Totally. Because if you think about it, I think everyone knows the elementary school fact of 71% of the Earth is covered in water. You know that? That's the common elementary school phrase. And that's actually monumental here, because we're only using 1/5 of the Earth's surface area, and even less because, as we'll talk about in a few later slides, we don't use all of the Earth's surface, like the Arctic, uninhabitable. So if we could use the oceans, then we could support a much higher population. And I would like to address some of the concerns with building something like this, because I think the main one is rust. Your buildings would rust. If you've ever seen the hull of a ship, of a barge that has been used very often, it is gross. And you might have that become the outside of your buildings. So I'm trying to think how one would overcome that.
I mean, obviously they'd need to use different technique than building today.
Yeah.
But we would kind of be like coming full circle in terms of not just human life, but all life in general, because, all life in general started out as just chilling underwater. So it was kind of funny if finally, after having evolved to be able to like walk, that we decided to just say, screw it, let's go back underwater.
Basically the evolutionary path of a whale. They evolved the ability to get out of the water. They're like, this is pretty cool. But then they just went back in the water. What a turn of events.
And then the sun regresses, or like Earth's magnetic shield regresses, so that the Earth is a deadly laser again.
Yep, the sun
is a deadly laser.
Yeah. Well, I think for cities like this, right?
Let's head over to the next one.
Oh wait, I just want to add one more thing. I think for cities like this, like in our picture, we have individual buildings are like separated and underwater, but I don't think we would build it like that. I think we would probably build everything under like a dome or something. What do you think?
Well, don't look. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah,
it would be like an arcology underwater almost.
Exactly.
If there wasn't.
Because
don't look to BioShock for like engineering. Because as you can see, you have the city of Columbia in the top left, which is a flying city.
Yeah.
And that doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
They tried to explain it in game. But yo no comprendo.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, if you think about it, imagine you just want to go to the restaurant down the block and you have to don scuba gear just to get there. You know?
Yeah.
No, that's underwater cities.
Work.
You gotta, So now the Arctic.
All right. Let's head over to the Arctic.
We got the seed thing.
Yeah.
Is there a
the
name
Norwegian
for the seed thing, so we can
seed
stop
vault?
calling it the seed thing?
What?
Seed place.
I think it's the Norwegian
It's
seed
called
vault.
Svalbard.
It's in Svalbard?
Yeah.
Guys, Svalbard is probably the best island. Not for vacation, not for tropical vacation, but for science. It's such a fun place.
The Svalbard Global Seed Vault.
Yeah, I knew vault was in there.
It's very nice. I like the aesthetic.
Basically, Svalbard is this Norwegian-owned island above, like, north of Norway. And
that's where it is.
And it is international territory. So you can, like, go there on, I don't know, a scientific expedition or something. You are basically, if you could not get a visa to go to Norway, like you're able to get one to go to Svalbard. It's weird. They have, I don't know. I really don't actually know what international means in this regard, because you need a visa to go to Norway and to Svalbard.
Yeah.
But
anyways,
it's a place for international cooperation for science. But
yeah, and it has like a copy of the seeds for like every plant.
Yeah, that's what this vault is.
Very interesting. It's like a doomsday vault. But anyways, the Arctic idea of a utopia would be that we would also be like expanding the amount of habitable land.
Yeah.
And how we would do this, we probably like build some large structure in the Arctic.
Yeah.
So right now the Svalbard has almost 1 million samples of
Wow.
seeds, and they have a storage capacity of 4.5 million seed samples.
So yeah, this
So,
is supposed to be if pretty much if any species of plant goes extinct due to humans messing up, then we can just grab a copy. Grab a copy. Yeah.
I
off
think,
the
yeah,
seed
this is a
vaults.
super smart idea.
Yeah. And if there's a complete apocalypse,
yeah.
we've got some seeds on tap.
I wonder how they actually built. Like, it must have been very difficult to get the things there they needed to build like the facility, because most of it is like underground.
Mm-hmm.
I want to say.
Yeah.
Or it's not underground, but it like goes into the area behind it.
It is subterranean because
like it must have been like a massive project to build it.
Yeah, because if you want to survive, say, a nuclear warfare, you've got to be underground. So
it only cost $8.8 million.
Wow.
in U.S. dollars in 2008. So
That's crazy.
I mean, if you want to build your own, feel free.
Yeah, build your own DIY seed vault, global seed vault DIY. Yeah, so the Arctic is interesting, especially, this is like a negative thing, but especially with global warming, a lot of countries will be looking to the Arctic as it opens up. For example, I think a few months ago, the president of the U.S., Donald Trump, wanted to buy he wanted to buy Greenland from Denmark, and then Denmark was like no, and they were not pleased with that. They were not pleased with that request. But the U.S. has been trying to buy Greenland for a while. There's a long history of the U.S. trying to buy Greenland, which includes, it goes all the way back to when we bought Alaska. We also wanted to buy Greenland, but Denmark said no. So it's interesting because it's the Northwest Passage pretty much, and there's also a lot of oil there. But yeah.
All right, let's go into our projects.
Wait, go to what?
The next slide.
Oh, here, wait. Should we talk about how you would build something in the Arctic, like to withstand?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we can do that.
Yeah.
So obviously you need some decent insulation. Like salt is at it's basically at the North Pole. If you look at it on a map, it's way above Norway.
Yeah.
It's pretty much almost at the North Pole. So like the temperatures there are like ridiculously cold.
Mm-hmm.
So if you were to live here, you would need some pretty good insulation.
Yeah.
I'm trying to find the things.
Yeah, definitely. What I was saying with the Northwest Passage, though, is it's basically for trade routes. You would go above Canada, go north of Canada to get ship resources, and it used to be inaccessible because of all the ice up there. But as global warming continues, it's opening up, and the U.S. with Alaska, and if it were to buy Greenland, that would basically cover the entrance and exit of the Northwest Passage, pretty much making a chokehold so that the U.S. could have more control over the Northwest Passage. Because right now, Canada would be the main nation that would have control over it because it's Canadian waters. It goes through the Canadian islands. But if America had Alaska and Greenland, already has Alaska, but if it also had Greenland, then it can control the entrance and exit points and have a bit more force. So it's interesting. It's a big political thing. And then there's also the Antarctic, the forgotten wasteland Antarctic. There's a ton of claims on Antarctica, but it has been, no more claims are allowed because it is currently supposed to just be for science. And yeah. So how would you build something in the Arctic to withstand the cold? But also you have to consider to not disturb the cold as well, which what I mean by that is if you just have a very hot building and it keeps leaking heat, even if you don't care that you're paying for that crazy heating bill, you will end up heating up the Arctic by living there. And that would not be good, because global warming already is just heating up the Arctic as it heats up the whole planet. But if you were to set up shop in the Arctic, you would literally just be heating the surrounded areas, which would
So
not
I think
turn out
the
well.
Arctic utopia needs to combine with some sort of underground society.
Yeah.
Because not only would it be like warmer underground, possibly,
Yeah.
it would make it easier to like live in the Arctic without heating it up, and and you would be able to keep the society like pretty warm.
Yeah. That's also true for underwater civilizations as well, is that you might want to be underground underwater so that you don't disturb the seafloor, because if you think of coral reefs and things like that,
Yeah.
you
The
wouldn't.
only thing is,
wanna
then
mess
there would be a lot of pressure.
That's true. There would be a lot of
So
pressure, but there's already a lot
we-
of pressure underwater, but you
Yeah,
know.
there's already a lot of pressure.
Yeah. So it's interesting how one would live in the Arctic. There's also a possibility that you might want to, that like people might want to consider, is genetic editing, or just altering the human body in some way that we can tolerate colder temperatures, which is an interesting idea, because we talked about genetic alterations in earlier streams, and like life extension technologies as well as future technologies. We basically, if you could edit the human body, or even if you could live as an android or something like that, that didn't need to be kept as hot, then you could not use heating and you could leave the Arctic undisturbed, which is also interesting. You might want to, I think, Sebastian, I think you made a joke on this, that this looks like a giant desktop, like a giant computer. You might want to do a lot of computing in the Arctic, because computers function most efficiently when it's extremely cold. You guys know that?
Yeah.
I think it's one of the laws of computing. Computers
Yep.
run a lot better when it's really cold. That's why computers overheat when they shut down, because it's,
Yeah.
And
if you've ever been to a server, like a server
room,
base,
yeah.
Like it's usually big buildings where companies like have all of their servers that they use.
It's really
they're
cold,
freezing.
Right? Yeah.
If you've ever, I've been in a lot of them,
Mm-hmm.
and they are like just extremely cold, but the computers are like snappy.
Yeah, which is interesting because the computers also produce waste heat themselves, and if you fill the Arctic up with a ton of computers, then you would eventually heat it up and cause the same problems that human habitation would. So you have to be careful with this resource. We would have to put a limit on how much heat you could use, but then there's like how much waste heat you could be allowed to expel would be a big factor, I think. It would be like you could get fined probably for putting out too much waste heat. But another thing is that I think in an earlier episode we talked about like a solution to global warming would be putting up giant shades in Earth's orbit, right? So people might want to put shades in the orbit, in polar orbits around the Earth, or just in orbits that they will only shade the Arctic and the Antarctic, presumably, which brings up some interesting ethical concerns, because like you want to keep the Arctic cold. You want to keep it preserved for the wildlife, so it would be beneficial to put up those shades. But at the same time, the proponents of putting up those shades might just be companies that want to stick more computers there and make them more efficient, you know? Because if it's getting too warm in the Arctic, they might be like, oh, let's put up these sails and help the environment, put up these shades, keep the Arctic cold. But they might really just use that as justification to put in more computers and produce more waste heat. So it's interesting. The Arctic, an interesting land. Any other comments?
Living in the Arctic,
Mm-hmm.
that'd be pretty cool.
But
Ugh.
and let's go to the next slide. Oh
I'll see
yeah,
myself out.
our Utopia projects. So
Leaves.
I forgot we left this slide in there.
Yeah, this slide is
Yeah.
a little scary for me.
Yeah. Okay. So in 7th grade, when we were all still going to the same school,
God.
like 3 years ago, we
Yeah.
had a project for this we were in the gifted program, so not to flex, but
Not
it-
to
it-
flex, but
it was we had this project on building utopias and like making hypothetical utopian societies. And I remember being very excited for this project even years before, because this was the standard. Our teacher was saying, this is our 7th grade project. We always do this in 7th grade. And I was hyped
up.
personally.
Yeah.
What? I was really excited for this project. And then me and Zach, actually, we worked on this project together, which is why we did Utopian Societies. Sebastian, I think you did yours on your own, right? You didn't have a
I
partner?
did. Yeah, I did
Okay.
not have a partner. No one liked me in 7th grade.
Yeah.
No one wanted to work on this utopia named New Arkham.
That was its working name, and I forgot to change it.
That's great. You just got to the presentation and were like, oh no, I forgot to
Yeah.
change it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, my utopia was absolutely horrendous. Like, it looked good from a 7th grade standpoint, but
Uh-huh.
knowing what I know now, having like the political background I now have and like all of that, it was like just a dumpster fire of a project, and I can't believe people sat through it.
Well, look, at least your name, I think us criticizing your name is a little unfair.
Yeah, okay, Cylinder.
Because
Yeah, so
our
weird.
colony was called Cylinder, and now here's why. So our teacher, I remember when she introduced the project, she said, you guys can make this anywhere on Earth. And then me and Zach were like, can we make it not on Earth? Dabs. And we put it in Earth's
Oh my
orbit.
God.
Because remember, this is 3 years ago, so this would have been when dabbing was still popular.
Oh, that's
So
true.
so it's appropriate for the story.
True,
So
but
Yeah.
we
no.
wanted to have a space station. We'll talk about this later in Space Habitation, because we pretty much have a few slides for space stations that would look very similar to what our Utopia project looked like. But we would build a space station that was cylindrical, hence the name Cylinder, and it would rotate to simulate gravity because of centrifugal
Genius.
force. Okay, here's the thing. It's because we named it Cylinder because first we couldn't think of any names, and then I looked up Cylinder on Google Maps, and there was a town named Cylinder. So it's like, if it's good enough for an actual town, then you know what? We can call our Utopia Cylinder.
What state?
Yeah,
I don't know. I'll look it up. I will go into
Cylinder,
Google Maps on my
Google
phone
Maps.
right this instant, and I will look up Cylinder. I mean, there's
Cylinder.
towns called Jupiter and Earth.
I
So-
I know there's Jupiter and Earth, and I know one of them's in Texas.
Uh-huh.
But
Cylinder.
hold on, let me go to
Wait,
Google
where
Maps.
is-
I see Cylinder Express Propane.
Wait,
Oh, it's real.
yeah.
Oh no, it's in Iowa. It's in Iowa. Of course, it's in Iowa.
Cylinder, Iowa.
Cylinder, Iowa.
Let's read the Wikipedia page here. Cylinder,
Its
Iowa.
population was 88 in the 2010 census. The city. It is a city. Cylinder's population was 88 at the 2010 census. I know that's 9 years ago, but
and
city with
surprisingly,
80
that is a low. That is a
Oh,
low
the
for this
reason called
population.
Cylinder is
That is, it's
there's
been
like a bunch
declining.
of cylinders there. That's so weird.
Wait, what?
Is there?
Yeah, it's like it's got like those those things they store like fuel in. Like go to images.
Okay,
Yeah, that's what I'm doing.
we need to uncover. This is likely
Yeah, we need to do a deep dive.
This is a small
We
territory,
need
I
to go
think.
here. There's a post office there. That's pretty nice.
Yeah, if you know about how towns are made, like
Oh my god.
you never think about it, but how does a town get made? It's made just someone has a large piece of land and then they incorporate it by getting a postal service mail
There are a total of
office.
6 businesses in Cylinder Island.
That's pretty good. With 88 people, 6 businesses.
Wow.
That's pretty good.
There's a post office, a concrete plant, Deb and Dave's camping supplies. Quick
Deb
shout
and
out to HAACK's Sports Bar. Is that what, Hacks Sports Bar?
Uh-huh.
Call.
Oh yeah, I saw that.
Oh my gosh. This town, tiny town. We've gotta visit Cylinder at some point.
That is the actual Utopia.
Honestly. Yeah, the real Utopia.
The real
is just
Utopia is Cylinder, Iowa. Yeah, Cylinder, Iowa. Oh my gosh. So, anyways, we had justification. We had justification.
Sorry about that detour.
Yeah. Sorry about that detour to Cylinder, Iowa. We had justification. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
that's our justification. It was Cylinder, Iowa. So that's why we called our Utopia Cylinder. Yeah.
So, as there are utopias, there will probably also be dystopias in the future.
Oh yeah. Okay.
So yeah, let's head over to that next slide.
Yeah. Dystopia. So, is dystopia also something that the Greeks thought about, or was it a subversion that people
I
made
can tell
later
you.
on?
I think it was more of like, let's look at a utopia and then let's look at what's not a utopia, like the opposite.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
it's
just
a
adding
later-
the Latin prefix dis,
Mhm.
which means bad, to the word.
Oh,
utopia.
yeah, it was coined by Thomas More,
in what year?
Yeah.
1516, because when he wrote
1516.
his Utopia.
Yeah.
Wow. Wait. So 1516. That's a long time ago that it's existed.
Yeah.
Did he
Yeah,
write?
so
You
it's
said he wrote a
pretty old.
book about utopias, or?
Yeah, he did. Yeah, Thomas More was the first guy to ever write about a utopia.
Oh, okay. Other than Plato, right?
Well, I mean, Thomas More was probably one of the first people that
He coined the term.
typed utopia.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
dystopia is the opposite.
I kind of have
of
an
a
issue with that name actually, because
Yeah?
we earlier on we said utopia means place that cannot be reached.
Uh-oh.
So dystopia would just mean
Place that can be reached.
yeah, or
Well-
actually you're taking the hold on.
Well,
Hold on,
if you think about
which
it,
specific parts of the word utopia mean what?
if you
'cause
think
I-
about
I-
it though,
I-
that is the point of most dystopian tales. The author's message is usually a cautionary tale. It's usually don't
Yeah.
let this become
Yeah.
reality. So I think that's pretty apt that it would be a place that can be.
But also, utopia could also just mean good place,
Mm.
like the good place,
Yeah.
because
do.
No, but-
anyways.
Chidi, whatever his last name is, I haven't seen that show.
utopos would be like with a different spelling. It could be
Yeah.
just a
Uh-huh.
good place. So
Okay. Yeah, but anyways, just general idea of a dystopia, worst possible civilization. You've read The Hunger Games.
Mm.
You've read Harry Potter, which takes place in London. These are all dystopias.
Oh my lord. Wow.
Let's head over to the next slide.
Sure.
yeah, we already talked about this in the utopia slide, but
Yep.
now we
Yeah.
can talk about why.
So some of the pitfalls of having, and yeah, we basically went over this, but specifically let's focus on the capitalist part of it.
Mhm.
Obviously, the problem with competition, which capitalism encourages, is that people get like thrown under the bus sometimes, to put it lightly, and this would only increase on a literal planetary scale.
Yeah.
The competition and new industries being produced would almost kind of suffocate the consumers, and I wrote about this in my draft of my story involving this. It almost became a sort of corporatocracy,
Mm.
which is a system of government where the companies dictate a large part of what goes on in a country, but in this case, it would be of the planet. The corporations and the companies were making just so much money and were such a big part of consumers' daily lives that they essentially just became part of the government itself, and they oversaw the entire market. And like the only aspects that they didn't control were like the like judicial branch, like legislative, all that. But it's interesting because when you expand the capitalist like network on this planetary scale, this is one of the directions it can go in.
Yeah.
So that's what I got to say about that.
You need to make sure to avoid this kind of dystopia. You need to make sure to keep strong antitrust laws, right? If you think about, like, there's a lot of companies today that I think border dangerously close on this dystopian genre. If you think about the company
Guys, check out
who's
Disney Plus.
what?
Disney Plus.
Oh no!
Yeah,
yes,
Disney Plus.
the company whose mascot is a small rodent is questionable, but Disney is the best company on earth, and I will not say anything bad about Disney. Nothing bad about Disney.
Nope,
Also, the company whose name is a misspelling of a large number is also the best company on earth, and I will not say anything bad about them. Yeah, not gonna get banned
dangerous
from
path to go
this
down.
wonderful platform, but yeah. So companies, corporate, it's not fun. That's what you would have here. You would have a lot of disenfranchised people, and I would like to think that. So in my books, I don't think I'm ever going to really write a utopia or a dystopia because, in my opinion, I feel like every nation, any perfect nation, there's always a problem, in my opinion. I don't think anything can be perfect. And at the same time, for dystopias, I feel like if things get so bad, it will spark revolution. That's kind of my take on it. I don't think that's 100%, but if you think about it, if you have so many just impoverished people, then they're going to revolt. And even if in this type of system, even if the wealth inequality makes it so that they would be decimated, the like wealthy people still need consumers. And so they can't just it's interesting. Companies are to a certain degree beholden to their customers, but it's a blurry line, you know. Companies are, if a company, say, for example, a while back when United Airlines like kicked this guy off of their flight, their stock crashed, a ton of people just would not go on United. I think also Uber, for example, when there was this protest at an airport where they got all the taxi cab drivers to stop giving people rides home from the airport, and Uber kept going. There was a hashtag delete Uber on Twitter for a little bit after that. So companies that do morally reprehensible things, or I'm not trying to say that, like, these examples aren't the worst evil that a company can do. These are smaller scandals. But if a company does something so horrible, you have to think that people would drop them. You know, you have to think that they would reap what they sow.
Well, I don't want to say anything
to a certain degree,
too
right?
bold here, but
yeah.
But like YouTube is still very popular.
That is true.
In my opinion, the best company, but I think people now the reason that something like this, like
we're sorry, this video has become demonetized.
Yeah, you see, here's what I think. I think the problem with a lot of internet companies is that antitrust laws don't carry over well into the digital sphere. A lot
Yeah,
of our
that's
laws,
true.
like
Yeah.
free speech laws, they don't carry over well either, because a lot of companies ban people for saying controversial things, and then you say, hey, you should be considered a public square, but then they're like, no, we're a publisher and we can decide what we want to publish. And it's like, there have been congressional hearings on this. It's a whole issue, and hopefully it gets sorted out, because I think antitrust laws are probably the best way to avoid this kind of dystopia.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
if one company has control over a resource, then they can charge however much they want for it, especially if it's an essential resource, if you can't live without it. But yeah, and a lot these days, the internet could be considered an essential resource. If you are, like most jobs now, require the use of the internet. So I think very soon the laws are going to have to change on what these companies can get away with on the internet. And I hope that everything gets solved soon with some legal work. But yeah, it's interesting. So that's where I think the problems arise. It's abandoning antitrust laws or finding loopholes around them. So yeah, that's a capitalist dystopia.
All right.
Cool.
So
Next slide.
yeah, now we got
security
state.
So this is very interesting. I like to take the future thinking perspective, and I would like to talk about that a bit. But if you guys want to talk first about modern security states and the basic idea, then go ahead.
So yeah, I don't want to mention like any countries in particular that might like tend to instate the same policies. I'm really China not, and I'm just like trying to avoid that. And yeah, you see what I'm trying to do here.
Yeah.
But this has been a big issue. If you remember back in, like, even in our own country with Edward Snowden, that entire thing, how he kind of like exposed the NSA, I believe.
Yep.
For like spying on people, and like every government or every like modern government has done this in some aspect, I believe.
Even ancient governments, they had like spies, you know.
It's spies. Yeah, they had spies. Well, first, we could define what a security state like is.
Yeah.
So let me pull up the actual definition. Just
sure.
So here, dictionary definition. But basically, it centers around constant monitoring. It employs the Big Brother concept.
Yep. Yeah, you see, data is going to be very important in the 2020s, and in our careers, I think, once we're through high school and college, I think data is very important now. The collection of data, the use of data. If you think of Facebook had a scandal with Cambridge Analytica, and that's where we get all of the Mark Zuckerberg
I just watched
looking like a robot
documentary
memes,
on that, actually.
Yeah, that's where we get all those pictures of Mark Zuckerberg looking like a robot. You know, from that Senate hearing where they said, "Are you selling people's data? Are you infringing on people's rights?" It's interesting. Data is very important. I personally like to collect a lot of data on myself. So, for example, I time how long it takes me to get to school in the morning every morning and like write that down so that I know when I have to leave. I also write like what I'm doing for periods of time so that I can keep track and say if I am just being lazy and just watching YouTube for hours, then I say, no, I got to stop doing that. So data is very useful. And with anything very useful, it can be used by bad people to do bad things. So that's what happens when you get a security state.
Your routine is sort of shows that data is really collected for the purpose of making things more expedited and efficient.
Yeah.
So I think some elements of data collection are good, but then when
Definitely.
you have security states where all of your data is collected, and if you've done certain things that the government doesn't like, then you can be like punished heavily for it. That would not be like a good society to live in, because you'd always be under scrutiny.
Yeah, I think, what was it? Joseph Stalin said, "Show me the man and I'll show you the crime." Because there are a lot of little laws that are never really enforced, but that if you had a complete surveillance over your citizens, you could prosecute them for these small things. So that's the problem. Because, say, movie piracy or speeding, if you had like cameras on the entire track of the highway and could tell exactly when anyone went above the speed limit and ticket them for that, then that would be monumental. Nobody would speed, because even now when there's traffic light cameras and an occasional speed camera, people just speed when they don't see those cameras. But if you had a security state where these cameras and these surveillance systems were pervasive enough, then you would have to follow the law to the letter, which in some instances might improve society, because if you think about it, people speeding really causes a lot of accidents and death. So in that way, you might think that it might be beneficial. But then there's privacy concerns, you know? So here's my future angle.
Yeah.
This is have you heard of the concept of the Internet of Things?
Yeah.
So this is...
I think we talked about it before.
Okay. Yeah, I think we did. So just a refresher, or for anyone that's watching new this time, it is basically that your concept of a smart home, for example, if you have connection to the features of your house just from your phone, then it makes things more convenient. If you could just open an app, a lot of people have this actually, a thermometer that is connected to, thermostat that is connected to their phone, and they can just change the temperature so that, say, if they're away, they can lower the temperature if they forgot to turn it off, or if they are at home and they just do not want to get up, then they can just raise the temperature. And there's a lot of useful aspects of the Internet of Things. But if you have a security state and they had access to your Internet of Things, not only could they track you through it, but they could what's it called? Apprehend you by targeting your Internet of Things. For example, self-driving cars is a topic that we talked about, and let's say that you had a self-driving car that was connected to an app on your phone, and if somebody stole your car, you could press emergency button that locks them in and drives to the nearest police station to arrest them. Car theft would be done unless people could figure out how to disable that mechanism. Because if, as soon as the owner of the car realized that their car was gone, then they would just hit emergency and the perpetrator would be sent to the police station. But right,
that could also be
it could be
against
used
them, though, because
exactly.
people especially like hacking, they could just hack into it and stop your car and send you to the police station whenever they wanted to.
That's what I was about to get into. The government, for instance, if you think of government conspiracies and stuff like that, if you are a political dissident, they might just crash your car while you're driving. And then what do you do then? You can't do anything. This gets worse as we consider things such as electronic contact lenses or nanobots that might supplement your bloodstream. Then, the government, if they could control that, would be devastating. It would be devastating because you might think that at first all of these things in the fashion of a security state, it's usually something that sounds good and sounds like, oh, this will help stop crime, but then it is misused. So you could say if a person was on the run from the police, a dangerous criminal, if there was an active, event, I don't want to say, demonetized, right? If there was a event, if there was a dangerous event going on where someone was doing a very bad thing, then the police could have probable cause and target their nanobots in their bloodstream to stop blood flow to their brain for a few seconds so that they pass out, and then he can be safely apprehended. And you would think, okay, that's good. That would probably be good. But then what happens when the government, instead of cutting blood flow to your brain for a few seconds, they just permanently cut blood flow to your brain and say, oh, I don't know, he had a stroke or something, and shut down political dissent. That's like even worse of a problem, as we think of an Internet of Things that, instead of being all around us, might eventually be inside of us, is very dystopian, I think.
So yeah, that, like, the intentions could start out as being good, as you just said, but if you get one bad leader that abuses that power, suddenly you got a dystopia on your hands.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think security state
Should we move on?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
So next up we have and yes, it's pronounced, GIF of climate change, which is our next topic. So here you can see the sea level rising. That's pretty bad. Oh, there's one good thing, and that's Florida is now gone in the after.
Brutal. The American Southeast is... Look at how the Mississippi River swells down there.
Yeah.
You see that? That is crazy. There's so much low-lying land on the planet. This is... If all the land that disappears is under 66 meters in elevation, which is crazy. Just think of how much land is less than 66 meters above sea level. It's
a lot of land.
It's frightening, especially with the idea of climate change and how a lot of island nations are running the risk of being just completely submerged, which will cause a lot of problems in the future. And if these problems go unsolved, then you could end up with a sort of dystopia based on the negative effects of climate change. Now,
the state of nature.
Yeah. So if you think of the chlorofluorocarbons and how they depleted the ozone layer, and it's still recovering now, what if you just started using chlorofluorocarbons again, right? Just lifted the ban because they were too convenient. Then you might end up just completely depleting the ozone layer, and now, bam, it's a dystopia because people cannot safely go outside unless wearing like full covering, right? Just under a blanket of some sort, or you can just ban people from going outside for their own safety, of course, and then that's, dystopia. Bam. And yeah, you also have that with how climate change is going to worsen natural disasters. You might have a lot of problems there. So, yeah.
One interesting thing is that climate change could create new societies that turn out to be dystopias. And give me a second, I want to plug a book really quickly.
Okay.
Sure.
The book is Pulse by Patrick.
Ooh, Pulse. I think we've all...
Hands down, one of the worst books I've ever read in my entire life. But
wow.
The premise is essentially a society that is like... And the society's supposed to be all good, like good for the environment and stuff, but it ends up like really being quite strange
Yeah.
and terrible.
So yeah.
Isn't that the one where everyone lives in either LA or New York, and then 2 people live in the rest of the country?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it might have been. Some backstory for that is that like Zach and I were pretty much the only ones to read. Like we had tons of book choices.
I read that book
but
too.
Did you? Yeah, you were on the other team.
I was on the
You
other
were
team though. Okay. We had 2.
We were like the only 2 people
Yeah.
on our team to read that
Okay.
book, and it was hysterical because we were just laughing about how
Mhm.
utter garbage
Yeah.
the book was.
I don't remember.
But
I don't remember it being that
It
good.
does relate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was it? And then
It
there
does
was some
relate.
telekinetic abilities that just come in.
Yeah.
just like randomly thrown in there.
Yeah.
But
Yep.
an interesting thing for this entire video is how many books there have been, like about all of these different dystopias as well as
Uh-huh.
utopias.
Yeah.
Like it's a very prevalent topic in literature.
Mm-hmm.
Like if we look at the next slide,
Yeah.
Fahrenheit 451.
Oh yeah. Yeah, we'll get to that
It's
in a
pretty
bit.
big.
Yeah. So, climate change dystopia. What else do you think would go on in a climate change dystopia?
Well, a lot of people would be mad.
Mm.
But other than that, you would see mass overpopulation. Like if
Mhm.
you look down at
Yeah. That's...
South America, you can see that there's like a massive chunk of Brazil. That is Brazil. Of Brazil
Mhm.
being taken out there. Same with Venezuela. Venezuela's already got a lot of problems, and
Yeah.
you can obviously see that around the Central American
Mhm.
area. We already have like an immigration crisis, like all
Yeah.
of the countries and continents I just named do. So that would only get worse, and we would have to take some like pretty divisive action to
Yeah.
accommodate all of the new people. And that's
Yeah.
not just in North America either. Like look at I know that no one lives all the way up there in Russia,
Mm.
but it is affecting kind of the top.
Yeah.
Denmark is just totally
Yeah,
gone.
exactly. Not the happiest
Denmark.
country anymore.
Yeah.
Right? Denmark's completely
And
gone.
Britain
Along
took a
with
hit.
Belgium and
Yeah.
Holland. The
Yeah.
Low Countries, they are decimated.
Yeah.
They're already
So
below.
Denmark is just gone. Denmark has just been deleted,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
honestly. And Britain is also taking a hit right there, and
Yeah.
Ireland as well. And that's bad because a lot, like Britain is obviously a very important country, and
Yeah.
that entire country is inhabited, so they would also see some immigration crisis, even in or overpopulation crisis, even in their own country.
Also, if you look at China, that's Shanghai and Beijing underwater.
Oh yeah.
And pretty much that Great Sea that opens up there is running right through the heartland of the most densely populated area of China. And so they would end up having to flee into the western regions of the country, which are fairly underpopulated. And that would likely lead to more human rights abuses because China's already not very popular. The Chinese government, not very popular with the people that live in Western China.
Yeah.
So that would just exacerbate those tensions, which,
I think
So-
people wouldn't actually move. Like,
they wouldn't
I
move
think they would
too
have
far.
to-
They would move to
I
the
don't think
coast.
they would instantly become, they would instantly have to migrate somewhere else.
Mhm.
Because the sea level, it's not going to just, change overnight.
Yeah, it's
I
not going
think
to change
what
in one
you'll
GIF
see,
frame.
though, is that
GIF
the
frame. sorry.
cities will continue the sea levels rise to build further inland.
Mhm.
So I don't think it will actually create too much mass migration, except for places where they just got entirely deleted.
Yeah,
But,
exactly. Like if you
so
look,
if we want to address chat real quick, we got a question. So Josh is asking, what do you guys think of the future of cryptocurrencies? What do we think about that?
I know what I think of the past, and that is I wish I had bought a ton of Bitcoin
Bitcoin.
when
Yep.
it was worth nothing, and now I would be a Bitcoin billionaire. Yeah.
I think cryptocurrencies are aren't that crazy because
Yeah.
currency in general is just a strange idea, like assigning value to something that itself is entirely worthless. So, I mean, we could basically already have cryptocurrencies at this point because banking is already like entirely done on the internet, and you don't really even need cash anymore, except for like that one like good donut place, you know.
Yeah, that
But
one good
besides
donut
that,
place.
you have no need for cash. So
yeah, that one good donut place that is likely committing tax fraud, but you don't care because their donuts are too good.
Yeah.
Right? Like, why else would you be using just cash? If you're like, no credit card, I'm going to be like, okay, well, I hope no one calls the IRS, sir. But yeah, I think Bitcoin, I like it because I think it will help avoid some of these dystopian societies. Bitcoin specifically are very like trying to be, I don't know, they're trying to be advocates of free speech, but a bit like pretty intensely. So people that like some people have actually gotten their bank accounts terminated for being too controversial, which is a little odd, but Bitcoin lets them stay. So I think in creating a less controlled form of currency, I think cryptocurrencies will be very helpful towards preventing dystopias, because if a government starts to if a government starts to take advantage of its people using its currency, then people will be able to switch to cryptocurrency. And
yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And if new societies end up popping up, like this is going way into the future, but if like say we colonize Mars and then Mars kind of wants like independence from Earth, because I could definitely see that happening.
Yep.
If Mars wants like independence from Earth, they would like use their own Martian currency, you know?
Yeah.
So it would be interesting to see how the Martian currency or any other society's currency like evolves over time.
Yeah, definitely. So, yeah, climate change, dystopia too, pretty bad. And cool. I think should we go to the next slide?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
The
Information
next
dystopia.
we don't have that much about, but
So,
Yeah.
information dystopia is a society where everybody is a sheep. If you know the phrase "wake up, sheeple," if you've heard that, this is pretty much, it's what conspiracy theorists like to use to tell people, hey, you're being fed misinformation. And hopefully we're not being fed misinformation. Hopefully an information dystopia doesn't already exist. But it would be hard to know if an information dystopia existed because you would not have the information. This is basically where conspiracy theories, and not the theories, but conspiracies become a lot more common, and this is where government transparency drops to near zero. Their fourth FF value becomes FF. So they're fully opaque, and they do not tell their citizens anything truthful. They just tell their citizens what they want their citizens to know. And this is your information dystopia. The people are kept down by misinformation.
Yeah.
It's a very weak-minded philosophy, I think, to think that we could be living in an information dystopia already.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, sure, you could say everything you've ever heard is false, and you're being spoon-fed fake information, but it's not like you have to base things off your own reason as well.
Yeah.
And at least in this society, it wouldn't make sense if everything truly. But beyond information dystopias being societies in which the people are misfed information. It could just be societies where there's like a lack of thinking in total.
Yeah.
Like no one even thinks at all anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So like last year we read Fahrenheit 451.
Yeah.
And in that book, pretty much no one is actually thinking about
Yeah.
either
No one actually
themselves
cares.
or their society. So
Mm-hmm.
the lack of, and because all of the books are banned, like the lack of information itself makes it into a dystopia.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that's true. And it's information dystopia is pretty scary because you do see, although I also highly doubt that we are currently in an information dystopia, you do see cases in the government and in the media where some skepticism is warranted, and you see some things and you say, I'm not sure that's right. And it's kind of scary. It's like, it's no wonder that the concept of fake news has become very popular in recent years because there's growing distrust in the media, which, because of the president, he has gotten a lot of people to distrust the media. But you do see, obviously, I don't think that the media is part of this crazy conspiracy, but you do see some aspects where the practices of some organizations don't seem entirely honest and good for the people. You know, you do see some ulterior motives pop up every once in a while, and it's concerning because you would like your sources of information to be paragons of truth, just no bias whatsoever, but every person has a bias because that's the state of being human, and every company is run by some person somewhere along the chain. So it's weird. It's interesting. And there's also the concern that lots of money can be used to conceal the truth in certain situations. You know? So it's interesting.
I don't believe that we're living in an information dystopia right now.
Mm-hmm.
But the novels like Fahrenheit 451, I do see it more of like, as you said earlier, like cautionary tales.
Yeah.
Like it's obviously not going to get to that extreme.
Yeah.
Because we have like the internet and like stuff like that.
Yeah.
But it's definitely telling of how weak. So like that's like in the book, it's one of the quotes, or it's just a quote by Ray Bradbury, that the best way to weaken a populace is to starve them of information.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that's very true.
Yeah. If you look at chat, don't say what chat said, but that is what I was referencing. So nice job, chat.
Oh, thanks, Josh.
Yep. That's a interesting concern if you think about it, because that's an example. Well, I'm not going to say the example, but what I said earlier still holds true without the example. There are certain situations where you don't think that the given story is exactly what happened. So, yeah. So, I'm going to move on to the next one before we say something that we shouldn't say.
Yeah.
This has been a hard stream for censoring, for self-censoring, because we like to be scientific and we like to stray away from politics, but society is politics. So
society
is very entrenched in politics. So these are difficult topics to discuss without striking a nerve, So next one, conformity.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. I do not know who this man is.
No one knows.
No one knows. Sebastian, didn't you say he looks like the guy from Bird Box?
Oh, he looks like John Malkovich when he shaved his head.
Mm-hmm. we're gonna make the end of the world great again. What a great quote from a wonderful movie. Anyways, so I don't know as much about what you guys were going for here. I think this was when I had left and you guys were on this. So tell me what this is all about.
Just very briefly, it sort of goes hand in hand with the information dystopias.
Mm-hmm.
But instead of no one being able to think for themselves, everyone like tries to think as some like broader identity.
Mm-hmm.
So they're all trying to in a conformity dystopia, everyone is trying to like match one person or one specific set of ideals.
So is this
so
where
it would be very nationalistic?
Uh-huh.
And there's no one has any
Yeah.
basically. So like the short story Harrison Bergeron.
Okay. Love that story. 8th grade LA.
But yeah, it would be quite bad because the entire point of being human is to have individual expression.
Yeah.
In my opinion, at least. But conformity would like take that away, and it would make life like a lot more pointless.
Yeah, I believe it was Kurt Vonnegut that wrote Hergeron or
Hergeron.
We jokingly call it Hergeron Bergeron. But yeah, no, it was Kurt Vonnegut that wrote Harrison Bergeron, and as you could infer, it was a response to like communism and stuff because obviously the debate is communism is pushing like no competition. Yeah. And capitalism is for competition.
Yeah. And communism, I think, also stifles individuality because
exactly. I was going to say that Kurt took it a step farther and pushed the social part of it because if you are into history at all, the Soviet Union, there was like no set like religion, like there was like in a true communist nature that there would be like no money, no any of that. So it's like interesting to see the social aspects of it.
Yeah, I think that's true. So this is, I think in communist societies, they make people think of their country more than the individual, right? They think do what's best for the country rather than the individual, which is interesting if you think of the political horseshoe, because that is also a fascistic, nationalistic type of government. So both of these government systems kind of come together with conformity and ignore the wants and rights of the individual in favor of the needs of the country. So I think, what is it? The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. I think that's the motto of this kind of society. If you ever go on Nation States, you know that?
Yeah.
Alternate reality game Nation States.
I made Molinopolis.
Oh my gosh. Such nostalgia. I played that game years ago. My Nation States are probably all deleted because they delete them if you're inactive for too long. So I'm kind of sad about that. But so Nation States. I kind of want to play Nation States now. Anyways. Yeah. So what was I? Why did I bring up Nation States? I've forgotten. I've been thinking.
What are we talking about?
You can choose what type of government you want.
Yeah. You can choose what type of government you want. And
I'm about to pick authoritarian.
Yeah. Anyways, I think this is the last of the dystopian slides, right? Oh wait, no, there's one more.
Well, we've two subtopics.
Okay. Here, wait. So, violent societies.
Yeah, violent societies. This is, and right here we threw in the anarchy logo. This is kind of the dissolution of government. Like anarchy just means no government. You can think of it as
anarchy.
I mean, I almost said Mad Max Gravity Road.
Mad Max Gravity Road. Yeah.
Mad Max Fury Road or any of the Mad Maxes. Or if you've ever played the game Borderlands, you could call that pretty much an anarchy because there's no central government or no government at all
and if you
dictating anything.
If you look at the origins of the word, if you think of a monarchy is a system of government where the country is led by a monarch, and also crassy, so democracy, aristocracy, things like that. The word anarchy literally just adds the prefix "an," which means without, so it's without government. So that's exactly what it is. And this is kind of libertarian ideas taken to the extreme, right? This is like crazy type where murder legal. It's just that you might face retaliation. This is crazy stuff. It's totally violent societies. It's interesting. Basically, it's no taxes, right? No taxation, and it just allows people to do whatever they want. But I think to a certain degree, it's kind of like the Purge. But I think permanent setting, like allowing this to continue for too long, I think is unstable, because once you have an anarchy for a while, say one person amasses a group of people, they amass alliances, they amass bodyguards, for example, to protect them, but then they start raiding villages or towns or whatever and exacting tribute, and then you end up with these pseudo governments that are just smaller and within the country and made of people that have taken power, and they can enact their own laws. So an anarchy isn't really stable because eventually someone will come in and, set up shop as the government within this no government system, which is very weird. But maybe an anarchy could exist for longer if the government has one law, and that law is you cannot form a subsidiary government, which is just kind of weird. These are weird societies, but I brought up the Purge, and that's pretty much what you'd be living in, the Purge. Yeah.
Yep.
So it's interesting. What do you guys have on this? I think this was another one of the slides that I was not here for, so anything?
With the true idea of an anarchy, like right here, our title is Violent Societies, because, come on. Like, usually if you just strip all law, like if tomorrow every single law went away, like you said, it would be the Purge.
Yeah.
And, not everyone would immediately turn to stabbing each other, but there would be people who immediately do turn to that.
Yeah.
And those people then make everyone else, disobey the laws that are now non-existent. But true anarchy does not mean violence.
Yeah.
Anarchy could, just be kind of... And we're actually going to talk about this later. Native American tribes did not have one government tying them all together. All they had were the tribe leaders, who were kind of a government, but not necessarily, and they were also very mobile. So you could argue the point that Native American societies were an anarchy, and there was violence in the Native American lifestyle, especially warring with other tribes, but inside a tribe, you didn't go against your tribe members.
Yeah, exactly.
So it doesn't anarchy does not necessarily equal violence, which is a very important thing we need to keep in the back of our heads.
True.
So let's head over to the next thing.
Yeah.
Cool.
So this mastermind,
complacent.
This is a complacent dystopia. I believe this is what happened in Interstellar.
Yep. That's what I had in mind when I was putting this together. In Interstellar, basically nobody cares anymore, and things just kind of get worse and decay, and I mean, the day gets saved in the end when he pulls that weird maneuver around the black hole and comes back to Earth, but in a complacent dystopia, that wouldn't happen. Society would just slowly regress and peter out, and it's just depressing. It's like no one cares anymore. That's what a complacent dystopia is. Everyone just wants to go about sort of living their life comfortably enough, but they don't care to improve things, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, any
Yeah, we
comments?
kind of
Yeah.
see elements of this in our own society.
Mhm.
Everyone is just thinking about themselves for the most part, like
Yeah.
living off by themselves. But no one is really doing anything for the greater good anymore. And even if you are doing anything for the greater good, because of the way the world is now, it's very hard for your actions to have large impacts.
Yeah.
So people care less about doing anything.
Yeah. Also, there's a degree of entitlement that comes with these complacent dystopias, which are people thinking, nah, that's too much work for me. I should just be able to live like this without working for it, you know?
Yeah.
Which
So-
is interesting.
Yeah, we basically said everything that there is to say about this. Like, you got to take action
Yeah,
to make sure that
you have to
this
take
doesn't
action.
happen.
Yeah, pretty much.
So
if you don't want
what's-
this to happen,
You want to head
then
over?
do. Yeah, okay, I'll go to the next one.
Yeah. All right. So reverting to the past, like I just said, I just mentioned Native American stuff, which is our next slide after this. But in the past, like, there have been societies that no longer like exist to this day. But there's also the theory that we might kind of like screw ourselves over in this modern day and age and then be forced to revert to the past. So we're going to discuss that in the next couple of slides. So let's head over to the next one.
Yeah, well, first I just want to say,
Yeah,
the idea of eternal progress is, it's a modern idea, because if you think of periods in history, the human population once dwindled to like 10,000 people.
10,000 people, yeah.
Yeah, and I think the Dark
That's crazy.
Ages, the Dark Ages were a sort of halt of progress from the Roman Empire. Once that fell, progress greatly slowed. So reverting to the past isn't entirely impossible. Regression is possible.
Yeah, we just take an event that changed the world enough where like we lose a majority of the technology or something like that, and then we were sort of forced, because I don't think a lot of people would be willing to give up like the lifestyle we have today. But I think if it was taken away from them, we could very well go back to something from the past.
Especially that last dystopia, complacent dystopias, might be what generate a reversion to the past. So yeah, let's go to the first slide.
All right, so the Native American society is especially interesting to look at how it compares to the societies of today and how it might compare to things of the future. So, like we were saying before, it sort of was an anarchy, but at the same time, Native Americans enjoyed the most freedom out of probably any society on Earth. And a lot of them, before they were subjugated, the tribes themselves were very happy, and they had like a life that was like pretty interesting, and their freedom allowed them to like live with a stronger connection to nature and without like destroying the environment. So, and without a lot of the problems that we have today, because they didn't really have long lifespans, so they didn't exactly have overpopulation. And like if we reverted back to Native American like lifestyle, we could actually sustain ourselves with the population we have today, or with slightly less population.
So do you subscribe to the Jared Diamond's idea that reverting to the past might actually make people happier?
Yeah, I definitely personally think that's true.
Yeah.
I think it would be much harder now that we have like the modern technology, like running water and stuff that people would really have a problem with if it was taken away.
Yeah.
But I think in the long run, it would make people more happy.
Yeah. I think the one thing we can agree on, though, is that if they took away the Gravity Max live stream, society would fall into disorder.
Oh, yeah.
What would people do on Saturday nights?
Yeah, what would they do on Saturday night? Would they go out and be social and do teenage movie things? No, they should watch the Gravity Max live stream.
No, they gotta watch.
They've gotta watch the Gravity Max
live at 7 p.m. EST.
Yes,
every Saturday.
Yes, it's interesting though. Jared Diamond's arguments. I read this article by Jared Diamond in my history class a few months ago, where I find it a little brazen the way that he talks, and I didn't really agree with it fully. But the article basically, he thinks that people would be happier if we reverted to hunter-gatherer type societies, and his evidence is that immediately after humans switched to pastoralism and agriculture, that caused a decline in lifespan. Human lifespan went into the 20s, I believe. Before then, around 30, I think, was the average, and it dropped to 19 when societies first formed. And this is because living close together caused a ton of diseases to come up. And also, the diets of farmers were a lot worse than the diets of hunter-gatherers because it was just potatoes or just wheat, and that's it. Whereas the hunter-gatherers would have a diverse variety of foods. So, yeah. So that was Jared Diamond's argument. And I didn't entirely agree, but, there's some validity to it.
I think it's still an interesting argument to
make. I think it's a valid argument. I like my modern comforts, Which
an interesting thing is that with Native American, like right as it was about to end because of the British and Americans, there was this one notable figure, Tecumseh. I think that's how you pronounce it. He was a famous Native American leader, and he basically wanted all of the tribes to unite into like their own state and stand up against the British and the Americans. And I think it would have been very interesting if that had happened.
Yeah, definitely.
Because if they had been, if Tecumseh had existed, I don't know, 200 years beforehand and had predicted that the Americans and the British and all of the Europeans were going to come along, and then the Native Americans would have like a unifying enemy, and they could have actually became like a full-on society, and they might have even been able to prevent colonization of North America.
Yeah.
And interesting. The only thing in their way was basically disease. Like, I personally think that if it wasn't for disease, the Aztecs could have easily fought off the Spaniards, especially if they developed like guns and better swords, because they completely outnumbered them, and they had better fighting tactics as well. So
it's interesting.
It's just an interesting thing to think about.
That's true, because the French, I believe, when they went into Quebec and started colonizing that area, they actually supplied the Native Americans that they sided with, they supplied them with firearms and then had them go and fight the other tribes. Basically, this is a strategy that a lot of the European nations employed while colonizing. They basically set these peoples against each other and had them fight each other in order to keep them from fighting the Europeans, which they did do often, but obviously they didn't do it successfully enough to ward off European invasion. As
in the future, if we returned to hunter-gatherer societies, then there wouldn't really be any. If every society became hunter-gatherer, there wouldn't be any like power that could interfere like the Europeans did.
Yeah.
So I think the life would be pretty stable. I don't think there would be much that would jeopardize it.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah. I think I do know one thing that would jeopardize it is the problem that as soon as anybody came up with an idea, then development would start again, and you would begin to get people that didn't want to live as hunter-gatherers, and then, that would cause problems. Like,
that's possible.
This could end up being a little bit dystopian, because if you say people are happier as hunter-gatherers, people are better off as hunter-gatherers, so if someone black market starts building a steam engine in their backyard, right, would the authorities come and be like, no innovation, you're not allowed to innovate? Because once innovation starts, then the society begins to leave hunter-gatherer lifestyles. So I think the problem is that a good society that does not have dystopian governmental controls and is also a hunter-gatherer society is very unstable. I don't think it would be able to stay in the state that it started as for very long. So I think while it might be better, but I think it would be unsustainable. That's what I think. Just because of human nature.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's
right.
Interesting. Next slide.
You want to go into some decay?
Yes. Okay. So this is
apocalyptic decay.
Mm-hmm. Apocalyptic decay. This is some natural disaster or unnatural disaster, such as in this photo, that sends humanity back hundreds of years by killing off a huge portion of the population. If you think of a nuclear catastrophe, there are over 10,000 nuclear weapons on Earth in the arsenals, mostly in the arsenals of the United States and Russia. They're about tied, I think, 7,000 each. So there's got to be 15,000 nuclear warheads. If they all went off in the 15,000 most populous cities of the world, for instance, then humanity would be quite set back. Quite,
Well, I think there's like some statistic, you only need like, I forget exactly how many, but it was not, I think it was in the tens or maybe amounts of nuclear missiles to completely destroy all land in general. So if all of the 15,000 nukes went off, like, humanity would just be
it would be the fallout.
You'd have a few bunkers.
You would have a nuclear winter. But what you're saying is correct. Like, it would really only take like just ballpark like 100 or 200 nukes placed correctly to create enough fallout to like cover like both hemispheres, honestly. And it our only option would be pretty much to either go underwater or go like underground.
And also, this doesn't have to be a nuclear catastrophe. This could be a 5-kilometer asteroid strikes the Earth, kind of like the asteroid that killed the dinosaurs, except maybe we somehow survived a little bit, but we would be greatly set back. So this is a possibility for the future, which is interesting. So let's try to think, though. Say 99% of the population was killed in some catastrophe and only 1% remained. How would people regress? So this is kind of hard to think about. In science fiction, we see a lot of societies that have reverted, but it's rare that we see the process of reversion. It's hard to fathom in your mind. How could people just forget technology? And the answer really is that as people don't have the means to build that technology immediately after the disaster, all they have the ability to do is, say, farm, right? Even that would be greatly limited. They just have to search through scraps, and they're really just focused on survival. And so these technologies would break down if they aren't already destroyed, and they would only exist in memories. But then you might think, okay, well, maybe there's some people with some really good memories that could rebuild these technologies. But if things don't recover from the catastrophe in the lifespans of these people, then the technology dies with their memory. And you might think, oh, well, maybe they could teach it to their kids, but the longer you go without anyone trying to rebuild these technologies, the worse your odds are that they will be rebuilt in any time soon without just a complete repeat of the climbing up the technological ladder, you know? So,
Yep.
yeah, that's any
yeah,
comments?
so
Yeah.
with this, shockingly, this is one of the more plausible, like, possible things
Yeah.
on this list, which
Yep.
sucks.
Yep.
We've come to the brink of nuclear war, like, more times than I can count. Like,
yeah.
especially during, like, the Cold War and, like,
Yeah.
The
stuff
Cuban
like that,
Missile
but-
Crisis.
yeah. The, it just goes to show how, like, destructive, like, nuclear weapon, like, and I'm just using nuclear weapons as an example. I know that's not the only apocalypse, but it's like, it's mind-boggling that a innovation or an invention by humans would eventually set humans back.
Yeah.
It's like the duality of man.
The duality of man. Yes.
Yeah.
I use the technology to destroy the technology.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's head over to the next one.
Yeah, sure. So this is slow decay. And this is what you get when you have a complacent dystopia. So instead of some event killing off a huge portion of the population and then people forgetting technologies because there's so few people left that remember it, this is a slow process where certain factors cause people to lose their will to hold on to technology, which this is also hard to fathom as well. So I'll try and explain it. So do you have any comments, first of all?
For slow decay?
Yeah.
I think that this, like, combined with the complacent dystopia, like, the graphic we have here of, like, obviously evolution and then de-evolution.
Yep.
That would obviously, like, take just as long as evolution would take, probably even longer. But with this, I think this could be interesting because if, let's say, hypothetically, let's say that humanity, like, takes off and leaves 1% of humans on Earth, right? And everyone else goes off and just, like, colonizes the stars, but that 1% of humans, like, never really gets off of Earth.
Well, if you think about it, that's an apocalypse. That's an apocalyptic decay because it wipes out 99% of Earth's population. Even though that's due to emigration, it's still right.
It could actually still probably survive with 1% population.
Yeah, but what I'm
certain point.
What I'm saying is that if you waited like 3 million years or 4 million years or millions and millions of years, then you took the society, the humans that went out and colonized the stars
Mm-hmm.
and compared them with the humans that stayed on Earth, you could make the argument that you would see some like major evolutionary changes.
Yeah.
And the people on Earth might have even evolved backwards.
Mm-hmm.
You know? It's interesting to think about.
Yeah. Yeah, so this is totally goes with the complacent dystopia. It's basically people just stop caring to continue to produce technology, and they just use the technology they have, and then when it breaks, they're like, "Oh, that sucks. I don't care enough to rebuild it. I don't care enough to find someone who cares to rebuild it. So, guess it's just broken. Guess I'll just do something else now." It's like if your toaster were to break and instead of buying a new one, you just left it there. Let it collect dust. Your fridge breaks and you're like, "Oh well." And then things slowly, your washing machine breaks, your dishwasher breaks, and you just don't fix it. You just leave it and you just say, "Whatever, I'll just wash plates by hand now." It's just slow and depressing. Like the complacent dystopia.
When you wash 1 million dishes, you turn into a monkey.
Exactly.
You evolve backwards so rapidly.
Yes.
That you just turn into a chimpanzee on sight.
Wash some dishes real quick.
All right. Come back if you can.
Yeah. Anyway, so that's slow decay.
Mm-hmm.
I hope Zach, when he comes back, he's not going to be the same. Anyway, so this is another possibility. Recurring apocalypses. This is an interesting idea. Say that there is some technology that is the inevitable conclusion of our development. Say it's a few years off. Maybe it even already exists. Maybe it's nuclear bombs, right? Let's just use nuclear bombs as an example. Say that there is a catastrophic event where all of the world's nuclear arsenal is fired and the human population dwindles to maybe 10,000 and then has to re-evolve, and all technology is forgotten and we have to go back through the phases. We have to invent fire again. We have to invent the steam engine, the locomotive. Then we have to figure out the ladder of technology. And eventually we figure out nuclear bombs again. And then we go and eventually launch them all. And that kills the next society. And then again, it's dwindled down to 10,000. Because if you think about it, what if the human population dwindling to 10,000 was really just the result of some recurring apocalypse, and we are about to face that? And this has actually gone on hundreds of times or thousands of times, and we just don't know. That's basically the idea here. But
posts that make you go.
Posts that make r/. But I do have to add a little caveat. I don't think this is 100% realistic, because if humanity were to launch the entire nuclear arsenal, then we would see a layer in the fossil record that was extremely radioactive. So that would be our evidence.
The government found it, and maybe we're actually living in an information dystopia.
Oh, yes. Maybe it's both a recurring apocalypse and an information dystopia.
We're actually living in every kind of dystopia at the same time.
Oh, my gosh. All of the bad, none of the good.
Yeah, believe it or not, Earth is an ecomonopolis. We just can't see we can't see the entire city because we live in an infotopia.
Yeah, there's an empty lot across the street from where I live. Maybe that's actually just a mile-high skyscraper, and since I just never go over there, I just haven't noticed, and it's invisible.
Maybe. Yeah, you just can't see it.
Yeah, who can know? But
so yeah, those are reoccurring apocalypses.
Yeah.
It's the duality of man.
Yeah.
How we improve and we innovate only to de-evolve and go back to our roots. So let's head over to the next one.
Yeah. Okay. Yes.
So
Space Habitation.
he got a promotion.
He got a promotion.
The quantum mechanic is now the quantum astronaut.
Yes. And now he has a cookie.
Now, yep, he's the first man to ever hold a cookie in outer space.
You see, I've used this stock photo before, and I've never realized that there's a cookie in his hand. It frightens me.
So, yeah, Space Habitation is going to be our next and last segment of this before the final thoughts.
Yep.
And this is, out of anything here, this is like obviously the most realistic thing on this list. Like, we don't need to predict this, and we don't need to anticipate this. This is already real. We have the International Space Station. We have plans to make more than just the ISS. So let's get into the numbers and what's required for some space habitats.
Yeah. So first of all, space habitation is inevitable as we are running out of room on Earth. And although we might be able to use our ecologies and the tactics of an ecomonopolist to allow more people to live on Earth, as I said, for ecomonopolists, they need space infrastructure to survive. So this is, in the 2020s especially, there is going to be a lot of development in space. That is something to look forward to as we transition into this next decade. There are a lot of companies and a lot of demand for space and space habitation. So this is a layout for, this is just a typical layout for a space station that could support about 10 people. This is pretty much the layout of the International Space Station, except simplified and altered a bit. But the key features, such as the long modular way, spindly way that this station is laid out, is key. So this could support a crew of 10. And as you can see, it's only about 100 meters long. It's about the length of a football field, which you might think of as a lot, but imagine laying this out on a football field and you just have to live in these small tubes. It would be cramped, and also there's no gravity to speak of, so you are out of luck and you have to float around in space. And microgravity has a lot of negative health effects, such as it can cause eye problems and it can cause disorientation. So this is basically the life of an International Space Station astronaut. A lot of science is conducted on the International Space Station. Most of the space isn't to support crew, it's to support experiments, because this is our one outpost in space. There's this app I have called People in Space Right Now, and let me just pull it up. How many people are in space right now? 6.
7.
Nope, you are wrong.
6.
We
lost someone.
Oh no. There's Christina Koch, Alexander Skvortsov. There's a lot of Russians. Andrew Morgan, Luca Parmitano, Oleg Skripochka, and Jessica Mir.
Nice.
Out of those, which do you think is from Italy? Very Italian name, just gotta say. This guy. Anyways, so 6 people in space right now. And we're just conducting all of our zero gravity experiments there. So it isn't really a place for people to live in the future. It doesn't really offset any population. It's like, thank you, International Space Station, for decreasing the overpopulation problem by 6 people, all in a day's work, right? This isn't a solution to overpopulation. So, yeah. Also, all water and air must be recycled artificially on this space station. You have to recycle water through the filtration systems, and for air, you need to use CO2 scrubbers to get rid of the carbon dioxide that builds up in the air, and those constantly need to be imported from Earth, along with a lot of food supplies. There's not enough space to grow their own food, so they ship it in from Earth every few months, along with crew members as they rotate. So this is not self-sufficient. if there were, say, a nuclear apocalypse on Earth and the International Space Station was fine, they would only be fine for a few months because they would run out of air, run out of water, run out of food. It would not be good for them. So, yeah. Could you imagine being on the ISS, knowing that it's not self-sustainable and just watching as humanity dies? That would not be good because that would be a very depressing scene for a sci-fi movie. But anyways, so this is the International Space Station. I'm going to move on to the next slide. So here we have a wheel, but it is a space station.
This reminds me of the thing from 2001, A Space Odyssey.
Yes, that is an example. I think that is the approximate size that we're going for here. This is a space station 200 meters in diameter, and it's 20 meters thick, and it could support a population of about 100 people. So now you have a bit more room for things. And I set the rotation rate of this space station to be such that there is only Martian gravity along the ring. And gravity in centrifugal force, the experience of gravity decreases as you approach the center. But I put this at Martian gravity for a few reasons. First of all, a space station like this would serve the purpose of field testing some technologies and effects of Martian habitation because we do want to colonize Mars eventually. And it would be best to test out the effects of 40% gravity in a safe environment in Earth's orbit before we went to the planet. We would also test its effect on plants. Also, the reason you wouldn't want to go for full Earth-level gravity is that the radius of the space station is so small that if you were to have Earth-level gravity, you would be spinning around many rotations per minute, and it would be nauseating. People would get motion sickness. It would just be constant motion sickness on this space station, which literally sounds like hell. It just sounds like a torture method they would use in hell because motion sickness is the worst. But if you spin at a slower rate that has Martian gravity, then that is your way to avoid getting motion sickness. And a few things occur here. You still need carbon dioxide scrubbers for the air. You still need to import food. You still need to recycle water. However, there is a bit of plants that could supplement it. Now, here's why. The first thing is that on Mars, we would want to grow plants in the Martian soil, kind of like in the movie The Martian. We would want to do that on Mars if we were going to live on Mars, because you can't import food to Mars constantly. You can import food to a space station in Earth orbit because it's only a few hundred miles above the ground. But Mars is millions of miles away, so you would want to grow the food there. So there would be a lot of tests of edible plants here in this space station if its purposes are to figure out how we would go about colonizing Mars. So you would be able to supplement a little bit of the diet of the people on board with homegrown plants. That would probably be less than 10% of their diet, though. It would be mostly imported. You would also have a bit of carbon dioxide removal from these plants. They would get rid of the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, but you would still need scrubbers because it would not be enough. So what do you guys think of this level? What would you think about living on a space station like this? I think it would be really interesting because there's some psychological aspects. I forgot to mention them for the last layout, but when you're only living with 10 people, or in the case of the International Space Station, you're only living with 6 people, it can cause people to go insane. That's why the International Space Station crew has to be rotated every handful of months. I don't think anyone stays up there for more than a year because there are just too many psychological concerns. There's cabin fever. It's such a cramped space, and the microgravity is just weird, just generally screws things up for people. But in a space station with a population of 100, it might be a bit more doable psychologically, because if you think about it, Dunbar's number is around 150, which basically states that the maximum number of relationships you could uphold, the maximum number of friendships you could have, is 150. So 100 gets kind of near that. So people's social needs would be likely filled out by this space station. Not completely, of course, but it would get there. Think of the town of Cylinder, Iowa. There's only 88 people there, and they're not going insane. They've got enough human contact. I don't actually know, but I assume Cylinder, Iowa is doing well. Anyways.
I hope so.
Yeah, otherwise that invalidates our utopia. Cylinder, Iowa. Oh my gosh. But yeah, so that's a definite improvement in the psychology. I also like to think of the day-to-day life of a person here. First of all, Martian gravity sounds fun, because think of when you get out of bed or when you're going up the stairs, instead of really annoying amounts of effort, it's just lightweight. But there's also no, like when there's no gravity, you have no sense of orientation or perspective. But on this space station in the outer ring, things would still fall to the ground just a bit slower, and you would feel lighter. And you would have a nice view of Earth out the window, rotating slowly below you. So what do you think life would be like on this space station? How would
Pretty
you go
boring.
about your day?
I would have to be like, there's probably no Wi-Fi, is there?
No, they have Wi-Fi. They have great
Oh,
uplink.
do they?
The International Space
They're
Station.
really close to
Well, could I hop on the gram? That's the real question.
Could you? Would you use Tinder?
Would I use Tinder?
Yeah, would
to
you
look
use-
for singles near me in
Yes.
outer space?
Yes, that's the joke.
It's gonna
That's
be
the
my
joke.
next door neighbor, and that's it.
That's the
Yeah.
joke. No, the nearest people to you, hundreds of miles away.
Yeah, literal
Eh.
hundreds of miles, and then
Yeah.
one day it's people in like Mongolia, and then the next day
yeah,
it's
exactly.
someone in Brazil.
But yeah, I like to think my day-to-day life on the space station, I think there would be a lot of science conducted here, much like the International Space Station. So I would think you would do a lot of experiments and things like that. And it would be fairly sociable because you have 100 people. So you would have your little crew. Say there's smaller groups of people that conduct experiments together, say groups of 6 or 7, right? That, like a research team. You and your research team would probably go about your day doing research stuff, and then you would have lunch, and then you and the other crew members might have events every once in a while to keep things like fine and dandy. So I think it would be a pretty fun, pretty jovial atmosphere in this space station. It wouldn't really be a fully fledged society, though, of course. It would be more like employees at a single office building. A single office building worth of employees that have to live in the same area. So it's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to do a case study on this kind of society, see a day in the life, don't you think? Yeah. Anyway, so I'll go to the next slide. This is for 1,000 people, and it is 600 meters long and 60 meters deep. So now we have full gravity, and here, for the first time, we have something that enters the territory of offsetting population. It in itself wouldn't offset overpopulation, but it would be a field test for, can we put a town in space? That is the question that would be answered by the space station. So it would be an experiment, but it wouldn't be a classic experiment of testing out plants and things like that. The experiment would just be, living your life. You know?
Yeah.
Which is...
When do you think we
Yeah.
would get to this point? Like, what year?
Yeah, when would we get to this point? So, obviously, the first space station was 1999. That was
Yep.
the International Space
I'm
Station.
gonna go 2200.
The second one, I would say...
2200.
2200, wow. The second one, I would say, is probably coming around 2030s. And then the third one, I would probably say we could have that by the 2050s.
The reason I think there's going to be a century in between is that people, I don't think, are open enough economically to base exploration right now. I think we need to undergo like crazy, large-scale economic changes, because the thing that people always say in terms of space exploration, it just costs too much now. But if our idea of money and of like resources in total has changed, then we would start seeing rapid expansion of the space industry.
Yeah.
And the only chance of us getting something like this in the 2020s, 2030s, 50s would be if it was advertised. And I don't really see there being that much of a market for it. Like,
Well,
even though we do have like SpaceX and stuff, I'm not sure.
I think there would be a market for it, and here's the reason why. Imagine you are a celebrity, a major celebrity, and you have a net worth of 10, 20 million, and you find these annoying paparazzi fans constantly harassing you, constantly at your doorstep, at your mansion on Earth. So this company springs up and says, we are going to build a space station that consists of just 1,000 people. Do you want a spot? You might ask for a spot. You might decide to buy a spot, and then you could live there for a large period of time. And whenever you have to go, say, film a movie, you would just take a shuttle down to Earth and film your movie and then go back up and avoid all the fans, because you would just be living with other celebrities. So in a way, this could be the generation of... This would generate the best reality TV show in history. You would have 1,000 celebrities living in a space station, and you could just watch the drama unfold. But of course, that's an interesting aspect that you have to start to consider, is commercial interests. That once you get up to this level, you really can't fund something on just a scientific basis. You do start to get commercial interest. I said that twice, but anyways, it's interesting. So food could be grown on the space station a bit more, but I do think it would need to be supplemented by food on Earth. I would say 50-50 is probably the best, the most sustainable you could possibly get, but I don't think you could go much above that. Plants could be used to supplement CO2 scrubbers as well, and water is always recycled. So yeah, so there's that. And it would be a little self-sustainable. It would probably last a bit longer than the ISS would without Earth. But yeah, so psychology too. There's 1,000 people here, which you might think is low, but there are a lot of towns in America that just consist of 1,000 people. And you know, people might be fine just living with 1,000 people. So it
But
would
also,
be...
with those towns, they obviously hopefully have contact with people outside of the town as well.
So they can call,
and
collect call to Earth.
Could actually see this. I might go on a little tangent, but with communications between space and what's it called, Earth, you need
what's that one planet?
You can use quantum computing.
Yeah,
actually, and it's an interesting sector that could be extremely important for a lot of reasons, but it would also help out with space. I imagine the space stations themselves could run on quantum computers much more effectively, and it wouldn't be like that stupid movie. What movie was that we watched? movie where the space station had like this massive malfunction like every 5 seconds.
Wait, was it that one movie where they got teleported or something to the other side of the galaxy because of their...
Yeah, it was
Oh
that
my,
one.
that was the
Oh, that was,
Cloverfield
the
paradox.
Cloverfield. The second part of Cloverfield.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
That movie gave me trauma. It was pretty bad.
That was terrible.
I gotta say, I liked the first Cloverfield movie, just shot on like a camcorder pretty much. That was good movie. I like that, right? Like, it's about the
that was a
style.
great movie.
They had that, what do you call it? Blair Witch Project. They had the Blair Witch Project style, and that was a good movie. You also there was a movie called Some Number Cloverfield Lane. Do you remember that one?
Yeah.
Where it was this girl basically like woke up in a bunker with this guy who like built a bunker, crazy conspiracy theorist guy, and then this other person who was nice, and the older guy was like, we cannot go out there, it's an apocalypse. And the girl's like, bro, how do I even trust you? And then she eventually goes outside and sees like xenomorph looking creatures, and she narrowly escapes them and then heads to some bastion of society to fight aliens or something. And so that was also a good movie. But then Cloverfield Paradox, not a good movie, gotta say. Ugh. Anyways,
should we head over to the next slide?
Well, we still have a few things, right? So psychology, you would pretty much generate a gossipy, cliquey town, especially if it's made of mostly celebrities and rich people. I would like to see that reality TV show in the 2050s. What do you think?
Yeah.
So I think that would be a very interesting place to live. Day-to-day life, what would you do in your day-to-day life here? I personally, I don't think I would even live here day-to-day life because it's just full of celebrities, and unless Gravity Max takes off a bit more, then I don't think I would have reached that status of celebrity. But I think it would be difficult to live here because it would be fairly cliquey and gossipy and basically all the problems that come with a small town. What do you guys think?
I think it's similar to the last couple smaller ones, except now you have at least larger gene pool, if you will. I think you could easily get bored, but if the shuttle system between Earth and this place was good enough, like I would see this as being like you said, like rich people's like second homes.
Yeah, to get away from people on Earth.
I don't think people would actually be spending their entire life.
Yeah, not their entire life. I could imagine someone going 6 months of the year, making it their primary residence.
There'd probably be like fun sports or something.
Yeah. Yeah. So, all right. So should we move to the next slide?
Show.
Cool. So now this is for 10,000 people, and you finally get into the levels of population that it could be your standard happy American suburb, your classic 1950s black and white footage of your happy American suburb right here in this 4-kilometer long, 800 meters deep cylindrical space station. And you might call the town Cylinder. Anyways, so...
No, we would not.
No, we would not. Great. Very well said. We would not call it that. Now, here's a big design difference. You might have noticed a huge difference. First, we had wheels with spokes, and people basically lived in the tire section. But now we have these long rods that people can live in. And a big difference is that in the spoke part, the ring has a ceiling. You see that? The ring has a ceiling, so you have a closed roof that ends a few hundred, or not a few hundred, a few dozen meters up. But here, you don't have any closing. So your roof is the other side of the space station, which is the ground on the other side. And this could be a little disorienting for some. Imagine you look up into the big, beautiful sky, and instead of being a big, beautiful sky, it's just your neighbor's lawn. Imagine that. It's in Interstellar, they show one of these space stations. You remember that in the end scene?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's what you got to imagine here. And they would likely be able to be completely self-sufficient at this point, I would think. They would be able to grow their own plants for food and for recycling air. And they would recycle water through the ecosystem and things like that. They could have tiny amounts of weather. Tiny amounts, though. Very minimal. They could have moisture would evaporate, and then it could come back down as rain every once in a while. But it would be very odd because of the forces. I'm trying to remember. What are the forces called that have to do with motion? Shoot. With spinning motion. No, it's not centrifugal. It's shoot. It's what causes hurricanes. It's what causes hurricanes. I can't think of the word because I'm kind of tired, but
torque?
No, it's not torque.
That's the rotational equivalent of force.
Yeah. Well, whatever it is, it would cause the weather patterns to be odd. The rain would fall. It wouldn't fall straight. It would fall like in a swirling pattern. So you would get that. But let's think of the
Coriolis force?
Yes, the Coriolis force. That's what it is. There you go.
Yeah.
Wow, I felt right there. I felt like I was going crazy. Anyways, so the daily life on the space station, the type of people that would live here, especially if this is the first space station, then it's kind of similar to the last where it's just rich people. But if this is one of many, then it could be your average Joe just goes onto the space station and lives there. So what do you think the psychology would be? Or sorry, not the daily life. How'd you live your daily life here? I think I would live it fairly similarly to how we did in our town that you guys live in. Our town, right? The population's only a few times bigger than this. I feel like a lot of course, our town's a bit of an outlier for other reasons, but I think when you consider your average American town, you might get some of those results, especially if these are more upper middle class people. If these are the first few space stations and it's expensive to live in space, you might get some of the crazy social occurrences of the town that we live in, right?
Yeah.
So that's interesting. And the town would be isolated, though. It would be isolated from neighboring towns. I remember in our town, there's very few actual restaurants. You always got to go to the neighboring town to go to any chain restaurant that you like. But if you're in space, you can't just hop over to the neighboring town. So I think there would be an aspect of feeling isolated in the psychology of the
unless
people
you
in this
like
town.
connected a bunch of them together.
Yeah, and that actually that we'll do that later, but definitely you do get that possibility. So we'll speed through these actually. The next two are pretty much the same as this guy. So I'm just going to quickly, this is for 100,000 people, and then this is for 1 million people. So really nothing much changes except how many people you can support. As you can see, it's the same design, just scaled up a bit. So your biggest design for 1 million people, 75 kilometers long and 15 kilometers deep. This is gargantuan. 75 kilometers is about the height, the north to south distance of Rhode Island, which is the smallest state in the country, but this is an entire state wrapped up into a cylinder and just thrown out into the cosmos. And it can support 1 million people, which is about how many people Rhode Island supports. So This is just space Rhode
yeah.
Island, okay? This is
Mhm.
just space Rhode Island. So,
Space Rhode Island.
yeah, space Rhode Island right here. I dub thee Space Rhode Island. So
Nice.
you have self-sustainability, complete utter self-sustainability, because you have plants for oxygen and also for food, and you could even have livestock. However, this is an interesting thing with space habitation. It's very likely that people in space will have to become vegans because it is just very inefficient to bring animals into space, especially for food. Basically, there's this the way thermodynamics works with the food chain is that every level you go up, 90% of your energy is lost and only 10% is kept. So the amount of energy that you would get from eating a plant, right, will only be 10%. I'm not. Sorry, my grammar is breaking down. Anyways, the
This is gonna be great for the 12-hour stream.
yeah, I know. The Gravity Max all-nighter. Basically, you get 10% of the energy from the meat that ate the plant than from just eating that plant. You get what I'm
that's
saying?
bioaccumulation.
Yeah,
Mhm,
bioaccumulation. That's your problem. So you would not really want to eat meat in space. But of course, as we said with the celebrities and rich people, if the rich people want to have venison and like pork, then they're gonna get it in space. Damn the
You
expense,
could also
right?
just have like some of that good science engineered fake meat that's like really
that's
bad
true.
for you, but
That's true.
it tastes
So
like meat. So maybe
there might be some of that, but basically for the standard person, the cost of meat would likely go way up in space. And so a lot of people would likely switch to a vegetarian or vegan lifestyle in order to just cut costs and just because it's more efficient. And if they have these plant-based alternatives that work really well in the future, people might not mind. So that's interesting. So now we get to our stitching these colonies together. So this triangle right here holds 1 billion people.
That's a big triangle.
Isn't that just crazy? Because
that's like
it is pretty crazy.
Bigger than Texas.
Yeah, exactly. Each leg of the tiny triangles in the middle are composed of 2 of those 1 million person space stations. And as you can see, it stretches from Minnesota to Texas if you were to put it in space. You actually wouldn't be able to put this in Earth's orbit because it's so big that if it were in low Earth orbit, which is the orbit of the International Space Station, 400 miles up, it would actually be inside of the Roche limit for this object, which would mean that gravitational forces would pull it apart and just break it to pieces. So you would either have to have it orbit the sun or orbit the Earth a bit farther out. And this is just crazy because 1 billion people. There aren't even 1 billion people in America, and this triangle is smaller than America. But the fact that it's 3-dimensional and that all of this land is wrapped up into these small cylinders means that you could have a lot more space inside of these habitats. And if you think about 1 billion people, this is an entire country, and it's 2,500 kilometers long. Think about moving between these space stations. Imagine you just leave your space station and you, I don't know, take the space train, float over to a space station across the way. It's pretty crazy. And the psychology here, this is where you're complete. There isn't any more isolation because you're a complete nation now. Even higher population than a complete nation. So this is the end task. This is the end goal of space habitation.
We're in the end game now.
We're in the end game now,
Yeah.
stitching together these habitats. And yeah, also the empty spaces in between. Fun fact: this will be on the loading screen. You can put solar panels in there and use that for energy. So that's how you get energy on your space station. Yeah. Oh, also I put this little distance Google Maps thing. That's about the length of this space station is about the distance from NYC to Austin. So, yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay. Final thoughts.
Final thoughts. I do
think?
believe after this 3-hour stream,
Yeah.
we have concluded that we do live in a society.
I think yes. Inconclusive evidence that we live in a society.
Mm-hmm.
What do you guys think? Which of these future societies would you be excited for? Which are you fearful of? Hello?
All right, sorry, I'm back.
Oh, okay.
What's the question?
The question was, which of these future societies would you be excited for, and which would you be fearful of?
So, out of the utopias that I would like to live in, I think arcology is pretty nice. Like,
Yeah.
I like the outside and
Yeah.
everything, but arcology is like kind of what we talked about with Scandinavia. I feel like that would be super efficiency.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So which would you fear?
Which would I fear the most out of the
Yeah.
utopias or dystopias?
Out of everything we've discussed, it's
Out of
it's more
everything?
likely out of all that. Yeah, out of everything we discussed, it's more likely that it would be a dystopia. But if I don't know, if the Arctic really scares you that much, then you can choose that.
I think the worst one to be in. I'm just reviewing everything. I think the maybe the conformity thing.
Mm-hmm.
If there was any sort of forced conformity,
Yeah.
like brainwashing or like drugging the water or any of that, I think that would be the worst to live in.
Huh. What do you think, Zach?
I think the worst one would probably be the scariest one for me is information dystopia. Because you never I see our society today be so more like some of the information dystopias I've seen before.
Yeah.
And the one I would be the most excited for would actually be like reverting to past societies without technology.
Mm-hmm.
Because even though I use technology, so in saying this, I actually think that everyone could benefit from not having technology. And I think it would be interesting, and it's sad that we will never have the opportunity to have a life without technology that we do. And we'll never really know what that's like, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, you could always go Amish.
That is true.
There are societies
for a year or something. I'll see.
There are societies in modern day that willingly revert to the past, and it's interesting because you could also get that in space. So I'll answer the question for myself. I personally, I'm a sucker for space habitation. I just think that it would be the best feeling to just look out your window and bam, space, right? Just in all of its splendor and beauty, constant astronomy. I think that would be great. And in a space station in space, I think, what am I trying to say? I would like to live in space because there's a degree of freedom, especially if you have a smaller, more personal space station for, say, yourself and the people that you like to be around. If the, laws or regulations of the Earth were just becoming like intolerable to you, then you could just leave. You could just leave.
Yeah.
I feel like it's the ultimate degree of freedom where if there's a law you don't like, if things aren't going the way you want them to go, you can just leave. And they can't do anything to you because you can't have warfare in space. So it's against the treaties. So they couldn't nuke you and say, hey, come back here. So I think that's my favorite space habitation. And then the one I am most fearful of, I am very fearful of the security state because there is so much potential for technology in the future, and it irks me when people misuse it. I don't like that.
Yeah.
Because one of the main people always detract against new technology using the argument, oh, it could be used by bad people to do bad things. And I'm like, yes, I agree. But what if it isn't? Right? It's like you can't avoid something. You shouldn't avoid something good just because a few people might use it for bad, right? You should punish those who use it for bad and allow those who use it for good to use it for good. So I think security state scares me just... I think security state scares me just on that level. Yeah. So.
Yeah. All right. Well, technology can be used in many different ways.
Yeah.
That's what makes it quite a dangerous thing. But I would like to thank everyone at home for using their technology to tune in to the Gravity Max live stream. Always live at 7 p.m. EST.
Yep. Yes, and we are very excited for next week. You should definitely tune in. We are going to have a lot of friends over. It's going to be a Gravity Max house party. We are going to discuss something about aliens. We're going to discuss the possibility of extraterrestrial life, and it'll be fun. We'll have all of our previous guests on, except Zach. I think, can you make it, or?
Yeah, no, I probably won't be there.
Okay, so...
I might make a cameo for like 10 minutes. But...
Okay. So all of our previous guests, except unfortunately Zach won't be there, and we will have another new guest, one of our friends who will be a guest on her own later. So look forward to that. It's going to be a fun stream. It's going to be great, and that's next week. And also look out for the A Truly Dead Rock coming out on Thanksgiving at noon. And I would like to thank you, Zach, for being on our stream, being our guest today.
Yep. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, thanks for coming. And as always, I would like to thank my co-host, Sebastian, for joining me on this stream.
Always a pleasure.
Yeah. Anything else to say?
I would like to say only one word. Plethora. It means a lot.
Wonderful. End stream.